The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to another episode of AM Prime. I'm Naomi McNish.
And I am Jada McLeod.
So this morning we are jumping straight into a conversation that we think is super important in talking about real estate in Trinidad and Tobago. So as the real estate market in Trinidad and Tobago continues to evolve, many young professionals, first-time buyers and seasoned investors are trying to figure out how to navigate this landscape. From rising property prices to investment opportunities, understanding the industry is key in making smart financial decisions. Today we're joined by Karen Brown, the president of the TNT Real Estate Association, to break down the trends, challenges and opportunities in the local housing market. Whether you're looking to buy your first home, invest in property, or simply understand whether the market is headed, this conversation is for you. So good morning, Mr. Brown, and welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning.
So,
how are you guys doing today?
Oh, we're fine. We're doing really well. Thank you very much for asking. So, Mr. Brown, straight into it, how would you describe the current state of Trinidad and Tobago's real estate market at the moment?
Slow. If I have to use one word, slow. Based on the current economy, you know, there are not as many people buying real estate, and the majority of people who want to buy, they can't find properties that fit their budget. So I think TTMF would have a bunch of people who are qualified for their no down payment program, which caps home prices at $1 million. And you can't find properties for $1 million. I mean, there's a lot of challenges in Trinidad when it comes to home ownership, especially for first-time home buyers.
Yes. Are there any particular trends or shifts that young professionals and first-time buyers should be aware of?
I wouldn't say that there are any shifts right now. It's just a matter of the economy. The economy is bad. It's been bad it's gotten worse since COVID. And, you know, things have gotten more expensive. People not making as much, people's incomes haven't risen along with the cost of stuff. So you still find that home prices are outside of the price point that most people are comfortable purchasing, would be comfortable to purchase.
So,
you know, I mean, you have to purchase a home, if you have to make a 10% down payment, and typical homes right now on the market are $1.7 million. Most people don't have $170,000 sitting down to make a down payment, plus closing costs.
And I mean, I'm sure we can understand that, you know, part of the reason for this is, I mean, ever since COVID especially, like you said, you know, jobs have been on the line, and, you know, the job market as well is a factor in that. But I want to get your opinion between renting and buying. What do you think is the most feasible option, or the best or most practical of the two for a young professional?
At the end of the day, it's about housing, not necessarily home ownership. So you want to live somewhere. You know, a lot of people tell me, you know, renting is dead money. right? And at one point in my life, I used to say the same thing. But if you have to live somewhere, if you can't buy, you rent. You know, because even when you purchase a home, the first 15 years of that mortgage, you pay interest. You know, so you could pay 15 years into a mortgage and look at your balance, and your balance isn't that far away from the price you paid for the property. You know, I mean, over 30 years, it makes sense. You know, you'll own the property outright. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with now, today,
Yeah.
if you have to decide between do I rent or do I buy, if you're not in a position to buy, you have to rent. You know, it's for me, it's that black and white.
Yeah. So, I mean, are there any notable factors when making a decision between renting or buying? Apart from if you could afford to buy, but...
Location. So I spoke to a doctor recently. She's qualified for 1.9 million to purchase. She doesn't want to spend that amount, and she can, where she currently rents, she can find a house to purchase within that price point, but she doesn't want to live there because of the schooling system.
Right.
So she wants to move to where there are better schools because of her children.
Right.
Right. So that's a major factor for people. Sometimes just transportation. Last year we had a house for sale in Barco for 1.35 million. Brand new house. And most people would not purchase it because it's 30 minutes to the highway in Penal. And then if you're working, let's say you're working central, that's another 40-minute drive. So all of those things, the transportation, you know, lot of activity in central Trinidad, but also a lot of traffic. So a lot of people look at these factors when you're making a decision to buy a house. It's not just affordability, but it's all the other things around it. How far is it to work? How far is it for your children to get to school? How far it is to get to all the amenities you need, the doctors, grocery stores. You know, all those things play a major factor in making a decision on purchasing, because when you do purchase a home, you're making a long-term commitment that it's not that easy to get out of.
So I want to look at investment opportunities for young individuals when it comes to real estate. What are some of the best investment opportunities that a young individual can look into?
I smile because, you know, prior to doing what I do now, I used to invest in real estate in the US. I used to live in the US and I used to invest in real estate there. And that was 20, 25 years ago. It was easy to get into it then. For a young person wanting to invest in real estate, now when you use the word invest, you're not talking about buying a home.
Yes.
You're talking about buying a property that you're going to put down and make money over a period of time. Right? Yes. Trinidad does not provide, if you're looking for, most people when they hear investment, they think rental income.
Yes.
If you don't have cash, buying a rental income going through the bank is very difficult because the rents you will get will not cover your mortgage. So unless you're making a lot of money where you're able to offset the difference between the rent you're going to get and your mortgage payments, it's not a good option. Right? If people wanted to invest in real estate, maybe getting into building one house and selling it is a good option for someone, but is being able to have the money to get into it. Because let's just say you're renting and you want to buy a piece of land to build a house to sell. During that period of time, you have to make a mortgage payment. So you're going to pay rent and make a mortgage payment on that house. That is difficult for the typical person. So I think if young people wanted to get into investing in real estate, what they might want to consider doing is probably partnering with friends and pooling their resources to make it easier to do.
All right.
Because doing it on your own, unless you have money or a substantial amount of money sitting down in the bank is very difficult.
Yes. So going back to what you said, you know, if you don't have the initial, the money to invest, then it doesn't make sense to invest. But I wouldn't like to think that, I mean, if you have limited capital to get started in investing in properties, then I wouldn't like to think that you absolutely can't do it. You know, I feel like, well, I want to ask, is there a way where a young individual with limited capital can still get started in investment, in property investment? Maybe some sort of loophole or...
By becoming part of a group. I mean, it's something I'm thinking of establishing soon.
Right.
You know, being the focal point of bringing people together to create an investment group that can then purchase real estate. Because, I mean, think about buying real estate like buying stocks, right? You can't afford to buy Microsoft, but you can buy a share in Microsoft. So for young people starting off who don't have plenty of money to do it, if you were to come together and partner with other people, then that makes it, that's probably the only entry level to get into it. Because on your own, it is not that simple. I mean, I speak from a standpoint where, I mean, I'm a real estate broker and agent now, but I started up in real estate as an investor, right? It's very difficult to invest in Trinidad.
Yes.
You know, so unless you have unless you have that money to start off, it's a challenge for young people. So really partnering, you know, pooling your resources with friends would probably be the best option for young people.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really, really good idea, especially for a young professional. I think somebody, a young adult would really enjoy it. It comes like kind of like a, I mean, we have like susus and these kind of things that, you know, young people get involved in.
Yeah, similar, you know, you just put your money together. I mean, you have to have a plan. And unfortunately, in today's society, you have to be able to trust.
Yes.
You know, and that's a challenge that a lot of people have, because who do you trust? You can't trust everyone, and then you're going to take your hard-earned money to pool it with someone that if you don't trust them, you won't sleep good at night. You know, so, you know, but once it's, you know, people that you can trust and you have the proper guidance from attorneys who would put together the correct contracts for you that would protect you, it is possible.
So, Mr. Brown, for those individuals of means, those who have the resources to buy homes, what are some challenges that they can face and how can they overcome them?
So for people who have the means to buy, some of the challenges that they could face. One is home maintenance. Most people don't think about home maintenance when you're purchasing a home, right? So, so you address that by, you know, putting aside money to maintain your home every month and create a little fund. So if stuff happens, you could address it. You know, the next thing is that when you rent, so you rent and then you go to home ownership, and there's a jump in what your monthly payment is going to be, right? So it's adjusting for that. So sometimes you deal with that by just making sure that leading up to home ownership, you also put aside a little extra money to help buffer that increase, right? So you have what? So maintenance, the new increase in cost. When you were renting, landlords fixed everything.
Yeah.
You know, or stuff like appliances have to be replaced over a period of time. So when you become a homeowner, you really have to change your lifestyle. You can't continue that same. A lot of people Trinidad love to party, love to line. But when you become a homeowner, you really have to watch where you're spending your money, because you're now entering into this new financial world. But I think that's probably two of the major things that people have to deal with when they become homeowners. is that there's going to be an increase in your expenditure, right? If you buy it, if, as a young person, you buy a home, you may have one kid, but you want to have two more. You know, those are expenses that are going to come up that you have to meet, but you also have to pay this mortgage.
So if you're talking about financing and the responsibility of financing, are there any government initiatives or programs to help young persons begin to afford homes?
I'm sure there are, but not that I am currently aware of. I know of a lot of private people who do webinars and seminars for first-time home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of it's just geared towards getting people who want to buy,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily on properly preparing them for home ownership. I mean, but I know that there are some. I'm just not aware because I haven't had to attend those things because I don't need because I didn't need the information, you know. But I'm sure that there are some out there that help people. Me personally, once I'm dealing with my clients, I educate them so that they have an idea of what to expect.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of real estate. So how do you see the local real estate market evolving, let's say, within the next 5 years?
I think next 5 years, not that greatly, but longer term, and depending on which area of Trinidad you're looking at, right? Because it's a really big difference between North Trinidad and South Trinidad. So if you look up north, there's a lot of townhouses, right? And what that has done is it's created the ability for someone to own real estate without owning their own house with a backyard. And most people, when you think about owning a home, you think of this house, your own individual single family house with a backyard, right? And with the cost of real estate now, a lot of people are not going to be able to afford that, especially if you want to live in what we call the inner city, right? So you're going to find that, so all along the east-west corridor now and spreading to central, you're finding a lot of townhouses going up. So that's one of the changes that's already happening to help bring down the affordability of owning a home, right? That will eventually have to reach to the southern area. A lot of people in the south don't really like townhouses, but if you want to live in San Fernando at an affordable price, that's what's going to have to happen within the coming years to make it affordable, right? And then condominiums as well. It's something that's pretty popular up in Port of Spain. That shift's going to have to come down to Central and South Trinidad to make home ownership more affordable for buyers. People will have to then also now consider, if you do want your own house, moving further away from the city and commuting. So you go further away where land is cheaper. And if the land is cheaper, the homes will be cheaper. Right? Because right now there's a developer who does houses in Central for 1.5, 1.6. Just early COVID, he was doing some for 1.2. But a lot of people don't want, you're from Port of Spain or you're from San Fernando, and you don't want to go to Central and live. But if you want to get the affordable homes, you're going to have to go where the properties are more affordable, which will just mean that you have to accept the commute. Yeah, and that's what I see is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
More smaller homes or condos, townhouses for people to really be able to afford home ownership.
Yeah. Okay. What advice would you give to a young individual or an aspiring homeowner looking to make the right real estate decision in their life?
Start planning from early. I mean, you might look at yourself as 25, and not seeing the possibility of being able to own a home. But if you had a 5-year plan where you are saving towards it, getting an idea of what do I want, what type of house do I want, what does it cost, how much money do I have to save, and make that commitment from young. The earlier you start, the better, right? So you save the money, but you have a plan. You educate yourself on what is required to purchase a home. Because there are too many people who come to me are pre-qualified, yes? So they pre-qualify at the bank, but then when you tell them about closing costs, they're unaware of that. They needed all that extra money to purchase. So educate yourself on what's required to purchase a home, get an idea of where you want to live, and then create a plan that's going to get you there over a period of time.
All right. What is this? You mentioned the closing cost. What exactly is the closing cost?
So closing costs is, well, for first-time home buyers right now don't have to pay stamp duty. So the government has taken that away up to the first $2 million if you're a first-time home buyer. But then you have to pay legal fees to a lawyer to do the deed. You have to pay legal fees to do the mortgage documents. You have to pay for a valuation. You have to pay for the title searches, home insurance. You know, that's one that always catch people off guard when they're buying a home, that they have to get home insurance, and home insurance isn't cheap. You know, and these things add up. Somebody purchasing a home from TTM through TTMF, no down payment for $1 million. Your closing cost could be anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000.
Wow.
Right. So you really have to plan, get the information, create a plan, and then commit to the plan, because it's going to take a while.
Yes.
For you to save that money. I mean, if you're lucky and your parents could give you money, or we have a generation, right? We have a lot of people right now who their grandparents are passing away.
And they're inheriting these homes.
They're inheriting not just the homes, but some money. Because you might inherit a home, but you and 4 siblings inherit the home. So then you'll have to sell the home and split the money. Right? But if it's $1 million home and it's 4 of you all, you get $250,000. That's a great start towards you becoming a homeowner.
Yeah.
You know, so there are a lot of different variables, but it's all about planning. If you don't plan, you can't just wake up one morning and say, look, I want to go buy a house. Because I'm making money, I have a good job, I'm going to go to the bank and get a mortgage. Then you're going to find out that there are fees.
Yes.
I mean, even the banks have, that's another fee people don't consider. The banks have a loan fee, which is 1 to 1.5% of the mortgage amount.
Wow.
Which can be substantial.
Yes. Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of young people, they always say, you know, if you ask them, what's your goal? You know, one of them is most of the time always to own a home one day. And I think this is an important conversation to have, because we don't always realize or know, you know, the extent at which the process is you go through to get a home, to own a home, you know.
Correct.
But
a car is $100,000 up. A home is $1 million up.
Yes.
So you can't expect to just get a home without making some level of commitment and sacrifice to save the money to get to that point. When I purchased it was easy for me. It wasn't quite easy, but it was not easy. It's easier to purchase a home in the States, at least back 25 years ago when I purchased my first home. But it required me to move into my aunt's house for a year to pay off my bills, save some money. You know, my aunt said, come, live here rent-free, but save your money.
Yeah.
So I had to do that for a year to be able to have some money to make my first purchase.
Yes. That's why I think as a young person myself, I still live at home with my mom, and it's something that I always hear, stay home as long as possible. Yeah. Don't go and pay rent anywhere. Once you're home, you're comfortable, you know, stay home and build yourself, build your career, build your income, your savings, and, you know, stay as long as possible.
Correct. But staying at home comes with rules and regulations.
Well,
the young people want to get out there early to have their freedom.
Yeah.
But
that's why I'm saying, you know, as long as you're comfortable, as long as you know you're good, there's an agreement between you and your parents. then stay home. Don't be in a rush to leave.
Stay home, save your money, you're young, get a second job, save that money, learn to invest.
Yes.
Learn to invest, because the money staying down in the bank does nothing
Does
for
nothing. Exactly.
you. You could easily be, I mean, a young person could easily be teaming up with their friends, doing small real estate investments as a group,
Yes.
and making money.
Yes.
And then saving that money to then be able to purchase their own home when they're ready.
Yes. I wanted to get your view or your thoughts on recently there's been these tiny homes trending where the cost of them are like somewhere between, I could be wrong, gosh, 100 and something thousand to 700 and something thousand.
Is that the container homes?
Yes, and it has been a thing that people are actively looking into as a viable option to owning their first home. What are your thoughts on that? Is it actually a good option to have?
So it could be, right? It could be. I mean, I've given it a little thought myself. But one thing I came across when I was doing my own research was finding out how those container homes will fare over time given the weather in the Caribbean. Because if there's one thing you know, it's about containers. They all get rusty.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And we live in the Caribbean. We're close to the sea. Sea blast affects metal a lot. So you might buy a container home today that may be affordable, and be very attractive. But 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, it's rotting away. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with what's being sold on the market right now, but it's things that that is one aspect of it that somebody would have to look into.
Yes.
The longevity of that.
Yes. I personally didn't look into it much, but I would assume, based on what you're saying, because I agree that it can get rusted, and that's the logic that you would think of when you think about these container homes. But they do paint them up, and I mean, I think there are certain paints that could prevent rust.
I mean, it's possible. I really haven't done that much research into it, so it's possible. Because I mean, when you look in the U.S., it's a big growing trend. It's been there for a while now, and it's getting even bigger, where you see a lot of beautiful homes made from containers.
Yes.
It's more affordable now. The next thing would be, are the banks going to finance these things? Because if you own the land already and you could purchase it for $150,000 and you're able to save that money, that's fine. But if it's $600,000 and you don't have that money, is the bank going to finance it? We don't know. So that'll be a good question for the banks. Is that something that they would finance?
Yeah.
Is it something that Town and Country approves? Right? Yes, you'll be able to get TNTech from TNTech and get water from Wesn, but is Town and Country approving of container homes? And if they're not, banks may not finance it.
Yeah.
But it's an option. It's something I thought about once in terms of meeting the needs for, people who really couldn't afford much. That you create like in the States, you have these, what would you call them? Trailer parks.
Yeah.
Right? So you could have a bunch of containers on a large parcel of land with little driveways to each container. And it's a little one-bedroom studio apartment that a young person could rent for $1,500, $1,000 a month.
Yes.
And meet the affordability. So it does bring about the ability to create affordable housing. But in the short term, but is it a long-term solution? I can't say.
It may not be.
I think that the way we're seeing it trending is we're trending towards communal living more and more.
I am in that. I could see that happening down the road, because it's really one way of cutting into the cost of living. I mean, something as simple as, you say, stay at home. Stay at home.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a single child, stay at home. Maybe build an addition to the back to give you some privacy, and eventually you get your parents' house.
That's the Trinidadian way.
Right, that's the right. Or, you know, buying an acre of land where you have your house here and then you build for your children on another parcel of it over time, you know, or just people coming together and pooling their resources and building that communal living area where you share a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Mr. Brown, I would say that we are a little bit past the hour, so we do have to begin to wrap. I wanted to know if there's any last words you had for our viewers on this topic. Anything you wanted to leave with us?
So the biggest thing I see with people in Trinidad, where real estate is concerned, is education. People don't know. People need to make an effort to educate themselves on real estate. If you want to become a homeowner, you have to educate yourself on real estate, what it takes to buy, what it takes to own, maintain real estate. And it's not going to be easy, but if you want to do it, planning and sacrificing, right? And the idea that rent money is dead money, it's not true. Right? I own a real estate company. I sell real estate, but I rent.
That is a big point that you're making there. Rent money, renting is not wasting money. So, and a lot of people, I know we're supposed to wrap up, but you raised a huge point, and that is a debate that is constantly had.
Is it better to rent or is it better to own?
Is it better to, because renting, people think, you know, you're giving away money, you're wasting money because you're paying all this money over time, and then what do you get at the end of it? But
a roof over your head, that's what
from your perspective, why would you say rent money is not wasting money?
So I live in a nice neighborhood where I couldn't afford to buy here, but it allows me to have a nice house, have my business here because the house is big enough, and the money that I'm saving by not buying, I use to invest.
Right.
I'll eventually own a home, but I rather build a house and sell it and make a profit, and do it again, and eventually I'll get a home. It's important for me to have a home when I retire.
Yes.
No. I mean, I owned a home once before. I've owned multiple homes in the U.S. before, you know, and that's because I was younger and was able to get into a mortgage at 25. When you are 40 and 50 years old, the older you start, the higher your monthly payment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not rent is providing you with a home. But the money you're saving by not buying, you have to do something with it.
Yes, and the
you have
saving.
to make money with that money. You can't just party that money away.
Yeah, the saving comes from not having to pay all the extra fees that you would have mentioned, the closing costs and all of that.
Closing costs, home maintenance, property insurance.
Yes.
Right, and if people in educating themselves take a look at a mortgage schedule, which shows you every monthly payment that you would make over that 30 years. And they do the calculation and see how much they're going to pay for that house over 30 years. They would probably consider, should I buy? Because you probably pay more than twice the purchase price over 30 years.
Yeah.
Isn't a bad thing, but in educating yourself, you get to decide whether it makes sense for you to purchase now or continue renting.
Okay, we're coming to a close. I just want to
talk real estate whole day.
I can see that. I think us too, we have so many questions. But what are your thoughts on HDC? So we're looking at not buying a home privately, but if we were to go through the government to get a home,
Doesn't make sense.
Does that make sense for a young?
Well, if you get through with the lottery,
What you do?
it's not like you can go to ATC and say, I want to buy one of your homes. It's not on the market.
Yes.
You know, it's not on the market. It's not on the open market for sale. And if it was on the open market for sale, it would never sell for the price that HDC are selling it to citizens.
Yeah. That's true.
Right? So it's not that HDC. They're providing a service to people who can't afford, but it's not for the young professionals. Most are not going to qualify for it.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that covered a lot. So I do just want to thank you for your time.
Joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course, anytime. We'd love to chat more with you. But we are going to wrap up now. I do hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Thank you.
Yes. And to our
you guys
viewers.
have a great day as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to turn and show the numbers if I get this.
Of course.
Okay, for sure.
And if anybody wants to, how does this work?
You just, do that.
Anybody wants to, right, turn this side. So anybody want to get in touch with me, call the office, and you'll be able to find me.
And for those who may not be actually watching right now, it's 470-3232.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks again.
Thanks again. You guys have a great day.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And to our viewers, we're just going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back with you. Stay with us.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the normalization committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No.
Let's go to the last part.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
Respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services, yeah.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome to WESM. This is AM Prime. What day is it today? I feel like I never remember the days.
That's a tough one. Today's Thursday, so it's Friday Eve. So this morning we have some news updates for you guys, as we usually do. We're starting off first up with the ICANN School of Medicine at Mount Sinai has become the first medical school in the United States to provide all of its medical and graduate students, along with select faculty and staff, to access OpenAI's ChatGPT EDU platform. So this initiative aims to enhance collaborative learning and protect sensitive information, reflecting Mount Sinai's dedication to innovation and education.
Tools like ChatGPT to aid in their education, according to a recent survey. The benefits and drawbacks of these groundbreaking tools have sparked debates about its place in the classroom among students, educators, and institutions across the country. But one school in New York has decided to embrace the technology. The ICONN School of Medicine at Mount Sinai is now the first medical school to make OpenAI's educational platform, ChatGPT EDU, available to all of its med and graduate students. Tom Hansen got an exclusive first look at Mount Sinai's new initiative.
I'd like to practice a patient with headache in the outpatient clinic. So if you could pretend to be a patient with headache and come up with your own diagnosis, but don't tell me because I'd like to guess it in the end.
Joy Jiang, a fifth-year MD PhD student at the ICONN School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, is well-versed in the demands of medical school.
So what other medical conditions do you have?
I have asthma, but it's well controlled.
The common analogy for learning in medical school with any institution is drinking from a fire hydrant.
But new artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT EDU from OpenAI are designed to aid in med students' extensive training.
Hi, my name is Joy Jiang.
Mount Sinai is the first medical school in the nation to grant access to the platform to all of its MD and graduate students.
Has the pain been constant or intermittent since?
Jiang has used the chatbot to prepare for clinical exams featuring actor patients who simulate real-world medical encounters.
ChatGPT is just a great way to establish the baseline for what I want to say and how I want to approach the patient.
That's what prostate artery embolization is.
Fourth-year medical student Faris Ghulamali utilizes GPT-EDU to prep for surgeries and to clearly explain complex diagnoses and treatments to patients.
Do you think that using AI shortened down the time it would have taken you had you not had that tool?
It really helped at least reframe the explanation.
The rollout of GPT-EDU is part of a wider curriculum revamp at Mount Sinai, according to Dean of Education, Dr. David C. Thomas.
We know that students, faculty, that in medicine and medical education, that we're going to be using this tool exponentially going forward. And so it's our obligation to really teach students to be prepared for, medicine in the 21st century, right, going forward.
OpenAI has collaborated with universities and med schools like Mount Sinai to ensure robust safeguards are in place to protect student and patient privacy. GPT-EDU is built to be fully HIPAA compliant.
I think in medicine and in health in particular, it's essential that students learn how to use AI and how to use it safely so that when they get into the medical context, they can really unleash its superpowers in a responsible way.
Leah Belsky is OpenAI's VP and General Manager of Education. She equates the impact of AI in the 21st century workplace to that of email and internet access in the 1990s.
Where does AI fall on the scale of one of these transformative tools that will be integrated?
It helps them to learn faster, it helps them to discover new areas of knowledge, it helps them to explore more deeply. And so what we're really focused on is making sure that there is equitable access to AI.
Have you had any surgeries in the past?
While GPT-EDU is proving its use to students and educators,
she has medial pain.
Okay, excellent.
Administrators like Dr. Thomas stress it could never supplant humans as the foundation of medical training or practice.
Because as incredible as ChatGPT is, it can still get things wrong.
It still is not able to completely, sort of get the information that you need. And we want to make sure that the human person is there to work with a patient who is at the center point of being a physician is.
For CBS Saturday Morning, Tom Hansen, New York.
Really interesting, as long as it's not, students don't become so reliant on the AI, you still need that empathetic side and the immediacy of reacting to a patient.
That's so important, but teaching empathy, I think, should be at the core of what a physician is learning.
Right.
Because old school doctors, man, there's nothing better than those.
Bedside management. But if it can help with it, everyone will.
There it is.
So, I mean, that was an insightful look into how, Mount Sinai is integrating AI into its traditional medical education, and I know this is something that we've been talking about constantly, as of late, because it's growing, it's growing around the world, it's growing in education, and,
Yeah, faster than we think.
Yeah.
Faster than we think. I know OpenAI, ChatGPT, they launched their program, ChatGPT-EDU, and that is what Mount Sinai has used to build off for their own medical education or training platform. Other schools have also used it as well. So ChatGPT-EDU is a version of OpenAI ChatGPT built for universities to responsibly deploy AI agents or AI to students, faculties, researchers, campus operations. It can reason across text and vision, voice, use advanced tools such as data analysis. And there are a good amount of security controls on it as well, because, we're dealing with education. We're dealing with education. It's a big industry.
Yeah, because we have to remember, this AI cannot replace your critical thinking. It's not going to teach you how to think critically in situations, especially for medical students, where you have to be...
You have to know. You have to know.
Yeah.
So it's weird, because the way that they were using it is more so to help them frame their thoughts when talking to patients, so like patient relations. That's what it seemed like they were using it for, which is fine, but as the reporters would have stressed in the end, they can't, you need to always stress the importance of empathy, because ChatGPT isn't going to give you empathy. ChatGPT it's a robot. you have to be somebody that's naturally empathetic. You have to put your own self into the words. So even if ChatGPT gives you a framework, you need to be able to deliver to your patients in a humanized, natural, friendly, empathetic way. So if that's how they're using it, I don't really see an issue. They may be using it to study. I do it as well. I give the GPT whatever is my study material, and I ask it to feed me questions, right, and correct me after, when I'm wrong. Sometimes it's wrong. Yeah. So, I mean, there's another thing as well, GPTs.
It's not always correct. I've experienced that firsthand where I would ask a question, because I think some people too, we tend to go to ChatGPT before Google. You know, like back in the day, we would research on Google to get information. But now it's easier because ChatGPT will give us not only a direct answer, but would give us an extensive explanation if that's what we want. Whereas on Google, you have to look. It doesn't just give you the answer up front. You still have to search through the web, click a link, read through an article, whereas ChatGPT is going to give you the direct, straightforward answer with extensive explanation. And I think that's the shortcut that we all want.
Yeah, but I mean, it brings back the question, is it right? Because people were saying that there's always new advancements in life, especially with email and every new technological advancement. But AI, in my personal opinion, I think is different because, again, it's a shortcut.
It's a shortcut.
It takes away that critical thinking. I mean, you do have to still put in a certain level of thought, but what about when the AI fully learns you?
Yeah. Because with that shortcut, having to research for something is a great skill.
Yes.
You know?
Yes,
and
you're right.
And when we kind of shortcut around that process, we lose that the fundamental, you know, being in school. I remember in school, that was something that we had to learn how to do, how to research.
Yeah, there are entire schools of thought surrounded on the skill of researching.
At the beginning of COSTAT, it had a course called Fundamentals of Research. Like that was something we had. It was a compulsory course.
Yes.
You know, but now we will lose any fundamentals of research because we don't have to do it anymore.
But I mean, right now, what ChatGPT is letting us know is that, so they has, and I wrote an article about this, ChatGPT has the propensity to hallucinate, which is get things wrong. So it does bring in that question, that part of, we have to be able to say, okay, ChatGPT is telling me this, I'm going to go fact check that. So if you're using ChatGPT, guys, every single thing it tells you, fact check immediately. Because they would give you some of the most rational thinking explanation.
It's interesting because it's almost as if ChatGPT, well, they kind of, it gives its own opinion, which is weird. I remember I was doing an essay at a time and I was getting some information, but ChatGPT gave me like a foundation for the essay to build on. And when I was reading what it wrote, I'm like, something is wrong here. And I had to go back, but I didn't go to Google. I went on my class notes. And they got dates wrong. They got just timeline. And it's because the AI is, the way it's developed, it has a certain amount of data. Or from, like, I remember when before it became ChatGPT 4.0, ChatGPT always said they cannot give any data. They don't have data from 2022 and after. No, they have from 2022 and before, but not after. So they cannot answer any questions of recent times. And then I think they updated ChatGPT to 4.0, so now they have more current data. But because of that, I think there's somewhere in there you get information wrong.
Yeah, because I mean, ChatGPT, again, it's a robot. It has access to the entire internet. So you asking it to zero in on one thing that it may not be that, especially when it comes to Caribbean studies, those zero in on those one niche things is sometimes difficult for it because, again, it's everything. It doesn't know one. It's everything. It has the whole range of the internet.
ChatGPT, yes, it's a robot, but it was created by a human. So the data in this robot would it could be biased, you know, based on the human that created it. So sometimes I saw an article, I don't know if it was an article, I think it was a video of a guy talking, and he asked ChatGPT certain questions about religion, and ChatGPT was very closed off to certain religions that he asked about, you know. So you can see that there is biasness involved in the information.
Can only give out what we put in as kind of what you just said. If the internet has a closed off view for one religion, but a propensity for another, that's what ChatGPT is going to give you. It's a reflection of our society as it is. Again, it's everything in one. So you have to now go in and dig through it a little bit, which I guess helps you with your critical thinking skills. But what about when it's able to be more human-like in that way? Yeah. When it's less generative and more super, as we want to get into the super AI.
Which would happen the more you use it.
Yes. So what about then?
Scary.
Are we going to become obsolete? Is it our critical thinking skills going to just fade away because we're not using it anymore? You know?
Yeah.
It's a question that we would like to answer. But you know, you all know that we are very up to date on what's going on with AI, and we usually have conversations like these, and we are here to keep you updated on everything that's new in the AI space, open AI space. Yeah?
Yeah, because very soon I think Trinidad and Tobago, we are going to see a huge development and a huge push for AI to be used in our school system, and it already is being pushed in our school system. So it's definitely something we need to keep ourselves educated on and aware of, because it's happening. So,
yeah. So I believe we should take a short break, and we'll be right back with you with our interview, second interview of the day.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we cannot a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
The fluid retention occurs in the lungs, and they get short of breath, particularly with exertion. And there's a particularly condition where when lying down, they feel short of breath and have to use a lot of pillows. That's a sign that the shortness of breath might be due to heart failure.
welcome back to the program this morning. So we're jumping into a conversation that kind of, it's a feel-good conversation, you know, so it's the power of sport, and this goes far beyond medals. It builds confidence, fosters inclusions, and transforms lives. So we're talking about, we're talking about Special Olympics, Trinidad and Tobago. So joining us on the program now is Mr. Ferdinand Bibby. He's the National Director of the Special Olympics of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, Mr. Bibby.
Good morning to you and to the listening public.
Great, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, a little tired, but
yes.
Getting ready for Saturday, making sure everything is in place.
Awesome. So for those of us who may not fully understand or know or are aware of what is the Special Olympics and what is the mission behind the Special Olympics in Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, so Special Olympics is a worldwide organization that provides sporting opportunities for persons with intellectual disabilities. Its mission is to provide year-round sports training and competition for both children and adults with intellectual disabilities. But at Special Olympics, we always say that while we do sport, we do more than that. Because sport, we use that as the vehicle to attract the athletes out of their homes, and then we use the sporting environment to help work on building their self-confidence, building their self-esteem, fostering inclusion and acceptance by the wider community. So it's more than a sporting movement, it's inclusion and respect movement.
How is the Special Olympics different from Paralympics?
That's something we always have to explain. Now, Paralympics also provides for persons with intellectual disabilities. Paralympics is the international body that provides for persons with disabilities. However, Paralympics is predominantly facilitating persons with physical disabilities as well as, most importantly, elite athletes. So you have to be at the top of your game to qualify to participate at a Paralympic Games. Special Olympics, however, is more grassroots, and we try to attract persons of varying abilities and provide competition for them at our games. So while Paralympic, you have a standard qualifying time or distance to make it, so only the best would go. In the Special Olympic World Games, countries are offered quotas to participate.
What the persons who are part of the Special Olympics, is the Paralympics something that they kind of train towards, or it's a goal that they set?
Well, in some instances, but to qualify for Paralympics, you have varying classes of athletes, classes of disabilities. So unless you fall within one of those classes, you wouldn't be eligible to participate at the Paralympic. But if there are any athlete that is involved in Special Olympics who could also qualify and move on, of course, that's the goal. So we use a pathway of learning to play sport, learning to like sport, learning the fundamentals of sport, involving in Special Olympics. But of course, we always push our athletes to transition to whatever other means. So in the past, we have had athletes who have transitioned into mainstream sports. We had Tamika Campbell, who would have started with us beach soccer and would have gone on to be part of the Trinidad and Tobago beach soccer team that went to the Junior Commonwealth Games and won gold in 2018. We have Ansel Green, who was a very accomplished swimmer in Special Olympics, and he would have graduated into the mainstream competition, competing in triathlons. And he, for a short period, he would have been at the top of the game, both locally as well as regionally in triathlon. Recently, we had Trent Bettel, who would have qualified for a national open water swim team. So there is that pathway that athletes could move on not only to Paralympics if they can qualify, but also mainstream sports.
Mr. Bibi, I must say I love your passion, the way you're able to just rattle off the names and the energy that you speak about them with. I wanted to know where does your passion come from personally to you?
Well, it comes from the athletes themselves, because I started off coaching mainstream sports. I coached football with the prison service for a number of years. But while coaching mainstream sports, I also coach Special Olympics. And the greatest difference was that you have athletes in mainstream sports who at the age of 25 and 26 are ready to hang up and they're frustrated and they don't want to. But Special Olympic athletes who, because they have limited opportunities, are competing in their 50s, 60s. When they see you on the road, coach, when next we having training, coach, they look for opportunities. So that energy that the athletes give off of always wanting additional opportunities is my feeder.
All of these games I'm seeing that you guys participate in, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, please correct me, is Bocce? Bocce. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Well, Bocce is a game, something like lawn bowling, where the opponents, they roll out a target ball, and then they have 4 balls to roll, and the objective is to try to get your balls as closest to the target ball as possible. The closest visualization, the sport of curling?
Yes.
Right. So you see how there's a target ball, and then they send out this big ball and try as much as possible to get it as close to that. Well, the same thing happens in Bocce. And it's very interesting. It's very addictive. Once people see it, they want to play. They want to play.
What do you think is the most popular sport that you've seen be played?
Well, our athletes are just as any other athlete. So the traditional favorite sport, athletics, is the #1 sport in Special Olympics. The greatest number of athletes participate in athletics. But then you have football, you have bocce, we also have cricket to a lesser extent.
I'm seeing equestrian as well.
What's that?
I'm seeing equestrian as well.
Yes. So on the police mounted and canine branch have been giving human service for over 30-something years, because they, on a daily basis, provide a therapeutic riding classes for persons with disabilities. And we piggyback off of that and have athletes train to do the Special Olympic module for competition. And that has been one of the more successful, in medal-wise, sports for Special Olympics.
I saw members of
the Special Olympics participated in Carifta this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience for them?
Well, we continue knocking on doors. So as I mentioned, our goal is to foster acceptance, respect, and inclusion. So one of the ways is trying to get our athletes in mainstream sporting activities, community sports, or community leagues. So we would have started discussion with the president of entries, Mr. Ephraim Seret, J. Gordon, the secretary, and this was a culmination of those discussions. Our athletes, they were very elated for the opportunity, and more so by the reception given by the spectators, because for some reason we always tend to believe that persons with disabilities can't do. So when they saw the display of the abilities of the athletes as well as the competitiveness of the athletes, they were cheering, and the athletes would have loved that. So much so, the next task we have been given is to try to make leeway for regional representation at Carifta. So how can we have 20 programs in the Caribbean that are involved in Special Olympics? How can we probably expand from having just local athletes participating in Carifta to having regional competition, just like the mainstream athletes do?
So was just to understand, was the participation of the Special Olympic athletes in Carifta because Carifta, Trinidad and Tobago hosted Carifta this year?
Yes, well, in 2023, Bahamas hosted Carifta, and that was the first time that Special Olympic athletes participated in Carifta. Okay. They then went on to Grenada in 24, and again, the host country provided opportunities for their athletes. So it was an easy sell to entries for us because of our having athletes to add them in. But what we are saying is competition is competition. Our goal is to have a representation of Special Olympics in all mainstream or community competition. So that was our discussion, and we're hoping to expand now that we have started. We don't want to turn back. We don't want Carifta and NACAC to turn back or just restrict it to the host country participation.
Yeah. What kind of training and preparation goes into the Special Olympic athletes?
Well, our national games that we have been starting on Saturday is really the culmination of a one-year cycle. So we would have had national games last year in May. So coming out of that, the athletes would have gone back to their schools and have training. All right, so this competition in May here is really the test of their improvement from last year. But I can tell you that we need help, because the special schools need that physical education teacher assigned to the specific school to assist, because persons with intellectual disabilities and persons with disabilities on the whole have a higher incidence of non-communicable disease. And that is mainly because of inactivity. Inactivity because of either stigmatization, because people feel why them must be participating in sport or anything. Overprotection by the parents, because some of them don't believe some of them want to protect them from the stigmatization. So because of stigmatization and overprotection, you have less physical activity by persons with intellectual disabilities. So the need for that physical education teacher in those schools is higher than mainstream schools because of the end product of higher incidence and of NCD and shortened lifespans.
That's a very,
Yeah. Can you tell us, I know this weekend is the special or the national games. Yes. So can you tell us a little bit of what we can expect from these games and the structure of how things run on the day or days?
Well, we start with our opening ceremony. Our opening ceremony provides the official launch of the game. It provides the sponsors, our partners, an opportunity to bring greetings to the athlete. It also involves the recitation of oaths by the athletes, officials, coaches, as well as volunteers. You will also see, just like in mainstream Olympic ceremony, you will see an aspect of the torch and the lighting of the torch. What we do, though, is that at our opening ceremony, we send off our team of law enforcement torch runners. Law enforcement torch runners are persons from the protective services, police, prisons, defense force. So they have an awareness run throughout Trinidad, starting from Saturday. And then at the closing ceremony is when the final leg of the torch run comes in and the flame of hope is lit. So what you will see on Saturday is a parade of the teams that are involved in bocce as well as the rest of our games. You'll see representation of them. Then you will see the formal speech given by members of the board, the games organizing committee, some of the sponsors, Ministry of Sport, etc. Then the declaration of the games being open. And then from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you will have bocce competition.
So what is the significance of the oath, the athlete oath and the torch ceremony in this?
In the games?
In the games, yeah.
Well, Special Olympics is the only organization outside of the International Olympic Committee that is authorized to use the word Olympics as part of its name, right? And in doing so, our opening ceremonies are expected to mimic the mainstream Olympic Games as much as possible. So some of the same things, the parade of teams, you will see parade of teams, you will see speech, you will see some entertainment, you will also see oaths. So at our games, our athletes recite the athlete's oath: let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. So that signifies the willingness of athletes to give their best in competition, that they understand that while they may not win, the most important thing is improving performance and doing their best. And then the official's oath is really an indication or a promise of the officials that they will officiate at the highest standards, that they will meet the athletes' needs and ensure that competition is done in a transparent way. As well as the other also like volunteers, and coaches. It's just their promise to uphold the standards to ensure that the games run as best as they can.
So how long has the Special Olympics in Trinidad have been going on, and what would you say the most memorable experiences or learning lessons that you would have gone through?
Well, Special Olympics Trinidad and Tobago would have started in 1982. We recognize our founder as Miss Clark. We had a bunch of young university students who would have gone away to study and come back to Trinidad. So Mr. Ken Marine, Miss Kathleen Williams, and so they came back with the idea of Special Olympics. And since 1982, we have been in existence. So this is actually our 43rd year of existence, and we have been having national games every year, with the exception of the last 3 years that there were COVID restrictions between 2021, 22. My most memorable experience, or I think it has to be our hosting of the regional beach games in 2024, Special Olympics Regional Beach Games in 2024, because that is a project that is Trini-made, because we had an athlete from a Special Olympic athlete from Tobago who now works with Special Olympics International in Washington. He would have conceptualized, why not have beach games? Why we in the Caribbean are accustomed when we go by the beach playing cricket, football, as the case may be, why don't we have beach games in Special Olympics? And Special Olympics Trinidad and Tobago would have gone on since 2016 to have a multi-sport beach game event. So annually we have 6 areas of competition: open water swimming, we have tried aquathlon, we have had bocce on the beach, we have done beach football, beach volleyball, we have even tried powerlifting as well as athletics on the beach. So we, in recognition of our leadership, we would have been given the opportunity to stage the event last November. We had as many as 10 Caribbean countries coming to Trinidad to participate in that activity. So that stands out as the greatest achievement for me, or most memorable in Special Olympics.
Yes, that's really beautiful. We actually got a little comment from one of our viewers. They said, I think it's time for sports to return back into the country, because with all the crime, it's causing a havoc to the citizens. They also added that it can help kids to do something constructive after school instead of getting involved in crime. But my question out of that is, if a special needs individual isn't with a school or a team, how can they become involved with the initiative?
Right. Now, the easiest way is through the affiliation of the school. But we are trying to set up community clubs where we can have persons with intellectual disabilities come to those areas and participate in sports training based on whatever. So let's say Tobago, we may have football, cricket, athletics. In San Fernando, we may have 3 other sports. So we are in the process of trying to set that up. However, the challenge, as always, is the resources. 1, access to facilities. 2, access to coaches who are willing to give up their time. And 3, some sort of funding to facilitate the participation of coaches and provide provision of equipment.
So just going back to the games, I know there are 9 different institutions. This is what I saw online. I hope it's correct, but 9 different institutions and 8 sporting disciplines represented. Is that correct?
Yes, only at bocce. Overall,
okay.
we have as many as 29 special schools from Trinidad as well as Tobago, right? However, in certain sports, you have more participation than others. So in bocce, we would have nine schools participating. At the end of May, the 28th of May, we will be in Tobago for the 3 special schools there, and we'll be offering athletics, football, as well as bocce to those schools. We are also contemplating the sport of golf in Tobago because we have some athletes in Tobago who are training in golf.
What kind of partnerships? What kind of partnerships would you all need to make these events, possible and to continue on for many more years to come?
Well, resources. So, as I mentioned, how can coaches be given us? Everybody in Special Olympics at present are volunteers. No one is paid a salary, including me. So all of us are volunteers. Coaches are volunteers, and so you have coaches who have their regular day job or their regular schedules and have to provide time and space also for these special athletes, Special Olympic athletes to train. So what we would like to see is how can the community clubs, because you may have a gym you go to, you may have a club in your community that you know about, but how does that club provide opportunities for persons with intellectual disability? If a person has an intellectual disability and walks into that space, will they be provided an opportunity to train? So we are trying to sell the whole idea of inclusion. We know sometimes that those clubs, the community clubs, may not have the skills or the wherewithal to how to deal with persons with intellectual disabilities. So we provide training for them in those instances. Yeah. So you have the technical knowledge of coaching. We will tell you how to operate. So we are always out looking for partnerships to provide funding, partnerships to provide in-kind donations, because the athletes that are attending the games, we have to provide lunches, we have to provide meals. So we have sponsors like the Digicel Foundation, the Ministry of Sport. We have Blue Waters as our water provider, but there is so much more room for assistance, because some of the schools need that transportation. So we look for all avenues. Sometimes we have small givers who would just provide their vehicle to run errands, buy ice, supply ice, drop water, move equipment from point A to point B. As well as we have the services, the protective services who provide ambulances and infirmary officers or first aid practitioners to the games. We have the Regional Health Authority, who we also lean on to provide nurses and ambulances for first aid and safety at the games. So it's all around assistance. And as I mentioned, we also do off the field work. We do off the field work in personal development. So we have a program, Athlete Leadership Development Program, where we try to move the athlete towards being a leader to adopt leadership roles in the organization. So on Saturday, you will see one of our MCs is an athlete who has done training on his own in MCing, and we now provide, hey, here's a space for you to practice, because we want to display our athletes and their skills. You will see an athlete playing the anthem on the steel pan, because that is his ability, and we want to showcase that. We have athletes who move on to be officials. So all of that is where we look for support. So you might be able to, in your field, conducting interviews. We would like our athletes to replace me. So when you call for an interview, an athlete to be able to conduct that interview, so you could lend your time in preparing the athlete in public speaking and presentation skills. Because
do you all currently have athletes that are able to be a part of interviews or to be interviewed?
Yes. The challenge is the logistics of getting them. So once we have sufficient lead time, we can provide athletes. I will tell you, if you come or when you come on Saturday to the Mani Ramjan Stadium, you will be given an opportunity to interview athletes, find out what Special Olympic means to them, how Special Olympic has touched and saved and changed their lives. Because that is the real story. Yeah. That is the real story. We can talk, I can tell you all the history and everything about Special Olympics, but the athlete is the one who would be able to tell you how Special Olympics has made a real difference in their lives. So this is an invitation to you to come with a crew on Saturday and make that your project.
Yeah, thank you very much. But I want to ask about volunteering. So, what role does volunteering play within the Special Olympics here in Trinidad and Tobago? And then we also got a comment from a viewer. How can someone volunteer to get involved in order to assist with this venture, particularly in rural areas?
Right. So, as I said, volunteering has many roles, but on our Facebook page as well as our Instagram page, you will be able to find a volunteer registration form. Of course, because of our clients, we normally would conduct a screening of the volunteers. So we ask volunteers, fill out the form, give a self-declaration of their history. We do background checks. We ask persons to provide certificates of character, and then we ask them to go online at the Special Olympics in learning portal and do 2 safeguarding courses. Okay. Right? That is to provide them with the knowledge of Special Olympics and some of the do's and don'ts, because we have to protect our athletes. But it's easy. You can also call 391-1383. WhatsApp is available on the number. So if you contact, you can always forward a volunteer registration form for you. So you can get involved. And as I said, more importantly, we are also looking, just as Ms. McLeod said, for how we can reach people in the communities. So you might be able to go to a school in your community and provide some assistance as a volunteer coach, as a caregiver, or just go and learn, just assist. You may be a good, you may have your own work skills that you could give to the athletes or the students in that special school. So the realm of volunteering is
vast.
It's vast. Yes, it's vast. It's not just restricted to coaching, because it's about the all-round development of the person with the disability.
So I know that you would be a little bit before you would have made a comment on the social reception, how people receive people with disabilities, and that adding to the reason why there's a lot of bullying, a lot of scrutinization. towards people with disabilities. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. The mission of the Special Olympics is to be able to let people know more about the initiative, to have more inclusion. But inclusion comes from information. Not just with the Special Olympics, but do you know of any, let's say, training program or anything just to kind of get the message out there of what the disabilities really are and how to treat people with disabilities?
All right, so on the Special Olympics International website, you can find a lot of information as to how to what is intellectual disabilities, what may be the causes, what may be the types, right? How to interact, the language, the correct language to use around persons with disabilities, because disability is really a social construct rather than a physical construct, because you may have some physical limitation, but that limitation is only amplified because of the lack of social provision of opportunities for you. So you may be using a wheelchair and you might say, well, you're disabled. But if we provide sufficient, meaning we as a society, provide sufficient means of transportation for you, one, access to buildings for you, two, embrace seeing you using a wheelchair as a natural thing, then the whole concept of disability is removed, because you will just be another worker or another person.
Another human, another individual.
Yes, yes, that happens to use a wheelchair. And it's the same thing we say, that persons with intellectual disabilities, once given the opportunity and the support, can lead meaningful lives in society. They may never be able to function at the top academically, but they can still they still have their individual dreams. They still have things that they would like to do, because you have the situation where you have persons, their chronological age and their developmental age. That difference, because you may be 40, 45 years old according to the calendar, but your developmental age may be less than that. So how do you work on bringing those two to an acceptable position, for the individual, so that they can do things on their own? And we try to build that into the training environment. You're responsible for coming on time. So why you didn't come on time? Give a reason. You have a responsibility to come with your training equipment. You have a responsibility to respect the other persons who you are interacting with. So that their social development is also worked on while we work on their physical and technical, their technical ability. So that is that is what is needed. That is what is needed, and what our mission work towards.
So really quickly, Mr. Bibi, how would you, if you had to give like a grading or an assessment on the types of reception, whether it be governmental or just social, the reception of special needs individuals in Trinidad and Tobago, what would be your rating, your grade?
Well, I wouldn't give a rate, because my experience it's really an ebb and flow. So at one point in time, you may see a higher focus on this, greater attention, and then at another time you see it wean. So how the real battle is, how do you keep it on the burner on a consistent basis? And that is why we try to have activities throughout the year, so that there is always that reminder that persons with intellectual disabilities are people too, and have sporting needs, just like every one of us. So you will see now our games in the month of May. You will see a heightened activity, recognition, interest. Some people may want to participate, but July, August, people tell you Special Olympics. What is that? How it does get involved? What Special Olympics does do? So every year we have to go through this. We have to go through this this cycle of education, awareness, and acquaintance of the abilities of our athletes.
The work you do is really admirable.
Yes.
So if you had to just leave, like as we wrap, a little main message to our viewers on what I know that you talked about your message in the beginning, but can you just wrap all of that up for our viewers?
Well, I would simply say on the 10th of May at the Mani Ramjan Stadium from 8:30 a.m., Special Olympic athletes will be on display. Come out, interact, watch, be fans in the stands. Seeing is believing, but experiencing removes all doubt. So come out and see our athletes and be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bibby, for joining us on the program this morning and having this conversation with us. I think we definitely learned a lot, and just understanding that the Special Olympics is a thing and it will continue to be a thing here in Trinidad and Tobago, and then hopefully the wider region as well. So
more than that, I would hope that we have gained 2 additional voices.
Yes,
that
definitely.
in your spheres of influence, you now can carry the message about Special Olympics and widen the whole experience.
Yes, definitely. We are on board 100%. It's a great initiative to support. So we're just going to reiterate really quickly the information about this weekend. So the games will commence with the opening ceremony at the Mani Ramjan Stadium in Marabella on May 10th. That's Saturday at 8:30 a.m. And then the games run from May 10th to June 14th. And that's for the national games. And then we have the National Beach Games, which is in October. That's October 25th at Maracas Beach. And then the National Floorball Games in November 22nd of this year. So we have a lot of things to look forward to when it comes to the Special Olympics. And, I think as a nation, we should go and support because we support all our other athletes, and these athletes too. So definitely go support and let's see, how
we can make this bigger and better every single year.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Bibby. I do hope you enjoy
thanks for the opportunity for being here to spread the word.
Anytime. You come on the show anytime.
Will do.
Yes.
Will do. And I look forward to seeing you
this weekend.
Conduct your interviews this weekend.
I don't know if I'll be able to stay for the whole day, but I can come in the morning and see. Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
So, it kind of that was just. I'm in shock, and I'm very fascinated, and I do want to go and see, because I've never. I've never seen anything, of this nature, in a sense. I know, like, the Paralympics is something that it happens around the same time as the regular Olympics.
I would hope so.
Or sometime after. Yeah. But it's not as popular. That's the base of it. It's not as popular. So I really hope that this is something that we can take seriously and acknowledge as real sporting.
We encourage you to go out and support, because I mean, at the end of the day, is one man supports another man, one man help another, and if it means going out and sharing time and sharing community and volunteering in any way that you can, you lend your skills, you know, all of that is important. So if you go out just to watch and be entertained, or you want to go out and watch just to support, so we encourage you to go out as well. And
we have a list of the teams that will be participating in these sports. I think these are just schools, special needs schools around the country. So we have Happy Haven, Immortal Center, Independence, Lady Ho-Choi Home North, Lady Ho-Choi Home Gasparillo, Lady Ho-Choi School Gasparillo, Lady Ho-Choi School Penal, Mesa Center, I hope I got that right, National Center for Persons with Disabilities. So those are the participating teams. And then the sports discipline that we can expect: bocce, volleyball, equestrian, athletics, powerlifting.
That one shocked me. I was
Powerlifting,
like, yes.
Wow. Basketball, aquatics, and football. So, yeah, it's real sports, guys. Real sports. They are capable, or else they will not be doing this. So we definitely need to show support.
So yeah, that just about ends our show for today.
We actually have a comment from our discussion earlier on the AI. A viewer said, good morning, it is ever evolving and upgrading itself, where it will no longer need humans to upgrade. To upgrade.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting take. We want to hope that humans will always have a voice in where AI goes. We want to hope that we'll always be able to tell it what to do. But the reality of that is that we just don't know where it's going to go. We are in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from our first interview this morning, a viewer said, stay home, but if they are retired, you will be expected to help with food and bills. Then you can't be carrying on in your parents' home.
Right, so that was about the real estate discussion when it comes to young people moving out of their parents' home and going into living on their own. So they said, so stay home.
Stay home. Yeah, they said stay home.
In this economy.
If your parents are retired, then you'll be expected to help with food and bills.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, but once you're home, you can't carry on and do your own thing.
It depends on your parents.
It's true. This is something that we always hear. You know, once you're home with your parents, you have to honor that, respect that. They still have rules, even though you're an adult. You're home. So the rules that you had, I think it would be a little more flexible, relaxed, but there are still rules. I speak firsthand.
Yes. So yeah, just about that brings us to the end. So again, a reminder to leave your comments and suggestions for us as you have just done. Continue to do that and let us engage with you. WESNCC, our website, YouTube, Facebook. You can also WhatsApp us, and then you can be featured on AM Prime. So as usual, a reminder to live your life with purpose, and a quote for today to propel your day into greatness. This one is by William W. Perky. It reads, "You've got to dance like nobody's watching, love like you'll never be hurt, sing like there's nobody listening, although we are, and live like it's heaven on earth." I love that quote so much.
Can you say it one more time?
Sure. Okay, so you've got to dance like there's nobody watching, love like you'll never be hurt, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth. So poetic.
Yeah, I think that, I feel 10 times happier, more excited for the day, just hearing that. So I really like that quote.
Yes, it's William W. Perky. You could go and read up on what he does, because he's a really inspirational guy. Yeah.
All right. So, all right, guys. So that brings us to the end of the program this morning. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay inspired. We'll see you back here again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the normalization committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
Let's go to the last part.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Beckles Robinson vows bold new leadership. Mount Dore man on bribery charge granted bail. Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal Ramdayal eyed for Senate President. And internationally, Smokey Robinson sued for $50 million in assault case. Now for the details. Opposition leader Penelope Beckles Robinson has hit back at critics who says she's too soft-spoken, declaring her calmness is a sign of strength, not weakness. Speaking at her appointment ceremony at President's House, she pledged to usher in a new era of compassionate and collaborative leadership. Beckles Robinson said her service is rooted in the needs of everyday citizens and promised to hold the government accountable while supporting visionary policies. She also congratulated Prime Minister Kamla Prasad-Visesa, reflecting on her journey from student to political leader. A 46-year-old man from Champlain arrested on Election Day for alleged voter bribery has been granted bail. He was held on April 28th with $30,000 in his car, accused of offering cash for voters in Mount Dore. He returned to court on June 5th. Former UNC Senator Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal Ramdayal may be the next Senate President, according to party sources. While she hasn't confirmed the role, she says she's willing to serve at the Prime Minister's request. Veteran politician Wade Mark is also expected to return as Speaker of the House. Internationally, Motown icon Smokey Robinson is facing a $50 million lawsuit filed by 4 former employees alleging years of sexual assault and labor violations. The women claim Robinson repeatedly assaulted them while working in his home. Robinson and his wife, who also named in the lawsuit, have not commented. No criminal charges have been filed. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The fluid retention occurs in the lungs and you get short of breath, particularly with exertion, and is a particularly condition where when lying down they feel short of breath and have to use a lot of pillows. That's a sign that the shortness of breath might be due to heart failure.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
WESN.
course, we're still in the transition phase, and the transition of any new regime will have a lot of house cleaning to do, because you have to, figure out what was going on, where's your starting point, where did the other person leave off, what does all the figures mean, what is the current status of all the projects and all of the contracts and all of the employees and all of the buildings, maintenance status for assets, what is depreciated to the point where it's no longer viable and usable, what was, ironically, as you're transitioning, you yourself have to ask the question, what were the current various entities transitioning with regards to, maybe they were transitioning to new buildings, they were transitioning to new regulations and policies, they were transitioning to new assets. There's a lot of moving parts. This is one of the reasons why we have to hold off on the temptation to be demanding right now. From what I understand, and this is we got to get used to it quick. A lot of opposition supporters in certain opposition strongholds, being the PNM, they're quick to say, hey, how come you're not doing this, how come you're not doing that? It's basically the first week. Parliament ain't convened yet. One of the things that the transition, and we've seen something like this before, the current front page headline in at least one of today's daily papers is the fact that, certain ministries have found themselves with $570 million in unpaid debts with regards to health and the Ministry of the Attorney General. They say that it's going to be money owed to drug suppliers, maintenance contractors, and attorneys, which they're now burdened to clear. That's the reporting. $500 million currently owed to suppliers at the Ministry of Health, $70 million in legal fees owing, and the Office of the Attorney General and the Ministry of Legal Affairs has already apparently exhausted its budgetary allocation for this fiscal year. Now, fiscal year, so we're talking about since last year's budget. We're not talking about January the 1st. The mid-year budget review should probably have happened already. But, elections are when they are, apparently. Now, I think the temptation is to say that this is some conspiracy to burden the new administration with major debt. And I don't think so. I think this is a sign of how government cash flow was happening. Now the question is, are we going to condemn it and expect the new regime to operate differently? From what I understand, generally speaking, government has always been slow to make payments. So it's no surprise that there's going to be some ministries that's going to have outstanding debts that need to be cleared, because it's not like they pay things now for now. This is not a recent phenomenon. This has been ongoing for years. Of course, the question is to what extent did it also happen under UNC partnership NAR regime? Because we could say it's been ongoing for years, but a lot of those years, as some of the callers point out, were under the PNM. And I myself don't know, I don't have any information direct enough to say that it happened outside of the time of the previous PNM administration. But that seems to be a thing. So government doesn't pay off its debts now for now. And we've seen situations, we've spoken about them and talking point. AFCL is one of the larger examples, because a whole state entity basically goes defunct and the members of the board go radio silent because they can't say anything. Because what is there to say? Right? To some extent, that seems to be one of the ways the government kind of maintains this scenario. They have middle companies to send the money through, and for whatever reason, when it suits them, they might dry up the funding to the middlemen, which is themselves state entities, and all of a sudden it becomes hard to pay the debts for school maintenance and construction. They utilize a similar mechanism to protect themselves and away from the Nikwan situation. Because at some point, Nikwan was saying, we need gas. And upstream, downstream was saying, well, NGC ain't going to give us any more gas until we start paying off debt, so we can't give you any more gas.
And something similar like this happened in Tobago, where the new THA administration basically found themselves with a lot of debt. And again, to some extent, with the benefit of hindsight, I don't think this is any conspiracy to make things harder on your political opponents. This is, I believe, how they were operating and why they utilized loans. And let's not forget, it was news, right, about secret loans, $1.5 billion, and Stuart Young denied that claim that there was anything funny going on in bad faith. I think those loans were generally above board. He said that they were the approval process, so the discussion about these loans happened under common imbit. So we're talking about before the transition from Dr. Rowley's cabinet to Stuart Young's caretaker cabinet. And I suspect the $1.5 billion was to basically deal with cases like this, where the Ministry of Health is owing $500 million. Now comes the part where the new administration, in my opinion, has to make a difficult choice, because one of the things they campaigned on was decrying the amount of loans that the PNM utilized in order to finance expenditure. That's not sustainable. So on a very basic level, it's very understandable why you're going to call them out as the PNM's political opponents in a general election. It makes sense. You want to call them out. You need to use loans to finance your recurring expenditure. That doesn't make sense. That's not sustainable in the long run. That is a path to bankruptcy. That's what nouveau-rich families who are not financially literate and are financially irresponsible, because you now get into big money. You're newly rich. You don't know what you're doing. And then now the money starts to dry up. This happens a lot to athletes. That's why financial literacy and responsibility is drummed into new professional athletes. Because a lot of their predecessors who had hundreds of millions of dollars, what's the stories? With some boxers, American football players, basketball players, now they're broke, right? Because you underestimate when the money starts to dry up and you're thinking, well, we'll use loans to tie us over. Well, what happens when the Dragon Gas deal windfall doesn't come as quickly as expected? You're going to keep using loans? The reason why it's a difficult question is the flip side to that. And to some extent, we have to understand from the perspective of even the then PNM administration, what else are you going to do? A family could contract its spending, could downsize its house. A nation can't just downsize its economy. And the public sector cannot quickly downsize its expenditure. You could go through the exercise to reduce the wage bill, and it's not reducing the wage bill by getting rid of employees who are providing essential productivity to keep the system running. It's reducing the wage bill to cut out the excess fat. 70% is, on average, the wage bill for any commercial enterprise. And dare I say, it might, the percentage might be just as high or higher for the public sector, depending on how you interpret the books and what you include and don't include, right? The current administration now has this debt and have to figure out a way to finance it, and they might have to take out loans. Now the question is the public going to hold that against them? Is the opposition going to successfully use that to rally dissent against them? Will they be able to communicate the complexities of the situation in order to show nuance, set up realistic expectations, provide some sort of context, and overall offer leadership? Because I do think there's a world where they're going to have to probably, for the immediate term, because it's not like you could just flick a switch and all of a sudden $1 billion just shoots out of a wall and now you can pay your debts. A lot of diversification and new revenue streams, that's going to take time. Even 6 months would be extremely quick, and that might not be fast enough for what they've found. And this is kind of where you get trapped to some extent. The previous administration, to some extent, might have fallen in this trap maybe before. I believe this was happening before COVID. But once it starts, it's hard to get out of, because you're taking out loans to clear current expenditure, and then you might have to take out another loan to clear that loan, and so on and so on. Of course, if you get a foreign loan, in the immediate term, you get an injection of foreign exchange that you, in the long run, have to pay back, but that's a whole other story. Would it be necessary? It might. Should the new administration do it? Maybe. If they do it, how they communicate the situation would be telling on their ability to handle complex situations where you point out what is, in a basic sense, a negative, but in a practical sense, when you get into the reality of the situation, potentially necessary. The TPP, when they were the PDP and they now started their term in the THA, they realized that they had budgetary restrictions that did not allow them to fulfill all the promises they made. And what they did, and rightfully so, was to inform the public of this. The previous pre-NM administration, they did not necessarily do enough up front, so by year 7, year 8, when they're still trying to inform the public of what they found when they transitioned from the partnership regime, at that point in time, it's falling on deaf ears, because, we're a term and a half in. We don't want to hear that anymore. We're quite well removed. Why is that still affecting things now? If you did things properly up front with your communication, that would have paid dividends down the line, because then it wouldn't sound, that's how it comes off. I understand the reality. You may have found situations, I know of at least one, that was unfavorable when you entered into office. But complaining about it more than 5 years later made it sound more like sour grapes than actual reality or realistic facts. So now the new administration has to really come quick, in my opinion. One of quick wins is not as important as quick communication, of quick diagnosis, and not just, well, the PNM did this and the PNM did that. That's not enough. We want to see specifics, preferably with some sort of documentation to show what's going on. And not let it be a he said, she said. To some extent, that Whitehall thing is a he said, she said. To some extent, this could devolve into a he said, she said. To some extent, the current administration is going to be paying a little bit the price of the previous administration's communication style, especially if they don't prove that they are going to be better at it. Because if it looks very similar to how the PNM were communicating, eventually most of the population will default to, well, it's probably the same thing. And that perception deficit that I always kept talking about, that the police had and that the previous administration had, that could carry over if you look and sound too much the same. So really where they need to hit the ground running is to analyze and diagnose the situation and communicate the reality to us. We don't want to hear all the bad things they did just because they're bad, and you want to punch them when they're down. We want to hear the reality. What areas are good? What areas are bad? What is necessary? This is why promises like not having property tax and repealing the revenue authority, we understand. There could be good reasons for it, but more detailed information and reasoning would be better than just these generalized statements that we're going into. But I understand some of those decisions are pure politics and are not necessarily based on governance, economics. I mean, they're subjective anyway, so some could argue, might as well just go with the political dimension. But back to this debt. Dealing with this debt this is not the be-all and end-all. This is literally just the first or second thing. It's not even going to be one of the bigger challenges this administration faces. Because we need to understand, I think, and it's growing more and more clear, because as we're transitioning from one government to the next, the new administration does not have the same type of incentives to withhold certain information in the same type of way. So in that regard, they're not necessarily communicating exactly the same way with exactly the same agenda. They don't have the same agenda. Right now, they don't have to answer for what exists because they met that there, and they should responsibly communicate all of that to us. But this situation might just be the tip of the iceberg. And it might be one where, because it's going to be another 2 years before we see really new revenue streams coming from the energy sector. What are we going to do till then? Will we take the gamble? Will this administration take a similar gamble with utilizing loans for the next 2 years? This makes line items or projects like the sale of Magdalena and the refinery even more important. How quickly can they be done while still being responsible? Will the Office of the Procurement Regulator be brought on board fully for projects like that in order to ensure transparency and accountability? Don't know. That would be a way that you could differentiate yourself from the previous administration. Will they do it? We don't know. As time goes on, the honeymoon period will eventually end, but I would argue it's not over. But I will make an appeal to the government. Don't be like your predecessors and take certain things for granted. They haven't done that yet. They haven't done that yet. But again, we're still new into this chapter. Suja was right. This is the next chapter. He just didn't realize he wasn't the author. Sorry, I just had to slip that little sarcasm in. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into more specific technical topics. Well, to some extent. We're still going to be on the politics because that's the news of the day. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. I am Sean Michael Small. You would think I know my name. With that said, we'll be right back after this.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Speaking about authors of the next chapter, of course, Kamala Prasad-Bissessa, she is technically the author with the greatest contribution potentially for the next 5 years. with regards to the nation. That said, there's a second author, you know, an additional author, a backup author, at least so far for the opposition. That's not who we thought it was. That's Penelope Beckles. And she was sworn in a couple days ago, and she had some interesting things to say, and I believe, in my opinion, it's what I wanted to hear, or something along the lines of what I wanted to hear from the new opposition leader. Because I wanted the election results to not just give us the same old, regardless of who won. Because if it was, you know, 18-2, we might have gotten the same old, whether the UNC won or the PNM won. Now the UNC has a significant majority just on its own. And at the very least, the negative voter turnout for the PNM, that sends a message. The positive voter turnout, the increase in voters, it wasn't just that they had more than, they had an increase in voters. That sends a message to the UNC. Hopefully, they learn the right lessons on that. More on that later. And hopefully, the winner will see, hey, the country had a clear message on what they don't want. And the opposition will say the same thing. The country had a clear message that they didn't want what we were offering just now. We need to pivot. And I'm hoping that Penelope Beckles is going to be able to do just that. Here's one of the quotes that she gave to the media after she was sworn in as opposition leader. Let me be clear, it is not my conviction that opposition means obstruction. True leadership is not necessarily loud, aggressive, or denigrating. It is steady, thoughtful, and courageous. Our democracy flourishes not through divisiveness, but through robust debate, shared purpose, and mutual respect. We will hold the government accountable, yes, but always with your best interests at heart. We will be vigilant, accessible, and responsive as we provide constructive scrutiny. Constructive, not just scrutiny. Advocate for policies that reflect your aspirations and stand firm against injustice, inequality, malice, nepotism, and corruption should the need arise. Now, here's the thing, and this doesn't just apply to the opposition leader. This also applies to the government. When things are new, it's very easy to say all the right things. And the government itself is also saying all the right things. Can you sustain it? Despite all of the challenges that will push back against it. And in politics, around the world, except for maybe Singapore and some rare, unique snowflake cases like that, politics will have elements that push back against sentiments like this. Because one could argue, her party didn't do this a year ago, 6 months ago. What part of the SRC acceptance for the salary increases was advocated for policies that reflected the aspirations of the people of Trinidad and Tobago? What part of it was that? Just to one example, it's low-hanging fruit, right? And to some extent now, we already see the government, they got support from the unions. I understand that some of the things they campaigned on was lobbied for by the unions, so it makes sense they have to follow through with those promises. What's necessarily best for the unions is not always, sometimes it is, but it's not always what's in the best interest of the rest of the country. And I'm not saying that with specific examples in mind. I'm just saying that as a generalization. Law of averages would say that any organization, any entity, public or private, their agenda is not always going to be aligned with the agenda of the greater good. At some point, they're going to have their own private specific agenda for themselves. That's just reality. That's just necessity. But I want to go back to the top of the quote. True leadership is not necessarily loud, aggressive, or denigrating. And this goes to the criticisms that some people think Penelope Beckles is not strong enough. And I'm starting to get annoyed with the fact we perceive competence when we see confidence. And one of the things throughout my life, I don't like to speak in absolutes. In most cases, you're not actually sure. You can't guarantee results, right? In your business, whenever you have a job to do, you can't necessarily guarantee results. You can potentially guarantee the effort you're going to put in, but you can't guarantee the outcome. There's a lot of other factors that goes into it. And there are many times in life where there are enough unknowns that you know up front and people want to say how you think is going. I am the type of person that doesn't like to be confident when I don't know. And I've seen it where people interpret that as, well, you really don't know what you're doing, as opposed to, I am trying to look at the probabilities and give you a realistic estimate so that you understand. I'm not guaranteeing nothing here because I don't think that's right to do. But part of the psychology of human beings is there will be some people who will say, fake it till you make it. So we'll guarantee the results. We'll be very confident. What happens when it fails? Sometimes they're not held accountable because we fall for the trap of just because they're the loudest person in the room, which is something ironic for me to say, but I'm going to continue, doesn't mean they're right. How often do you see people complain about that in any sort of boardroom setting, meeting setting, leadership team setting, group project setting? So then why is it that we look at political campaigning and we look at who is the loudest politician in the room, who's the loudest politician on the mic, who's the loudest politician on TV, and somehow think, ah, yes, I could trust him to know what he's talking about because he's loud and confident. That has nothing to do with technical competence. And what the opposition leader is saying is basically that. And that's a light bulb that I wish would go off with more politicians in their minds to realize I don't have to be this bombastic fool. More on that later. So the opposition leader, she's also reported on saying that well, of course, she has to rebuild the party. I understand that she wants to potentially, I don't know to what extent she wants to change the image of the party. To what extent she's going to change the policies and the approach and the perspective. A more inclusive, progressive, and united country. The funny part about those words are, I don't think they necessarily mean the same thing that they mean in the United States because their politics is not the same as ours. The Prime Minister utilized similar language. She said she wasn't going to hold people's allegiance against them. Will we see, finally, after I don't know how many years, the two parties that, well, the two main parties that make up Parliament and the party in Tobago that speaks for Tobago. At this point, they speak for Tobago. No one else speaks for Tobago. Right? The vast majority of the THA plus the 2 seats, they speak for Tobago. Will they be able to come together to form a more unified government? Because the opposition is part of the government. And imagine what we could do with actual healthy, constructive debate. Not that I think it's likely that we could get constitutional reform, but we would need all sides to come together unless we have something similar to 33-3. We will need all sides to come together if we actually want to see issues at that level improved. Now, one of the things that the opposition leader said is there's no honeymoon for Kamala's government, saying that they will engage as soon as they have a legislative agenda from the government. They will start to engage. My only thing to say is this: the honeymoon is never granted, in my opinion, by the opposition party. You could choose to engage or not engage. That's up to you. The honeymoon is with regards to the people of the country, their tolerance and patience, because you have to have, some people don't have it. And as we said, you have to wait and see how things start to turn out, how things start to look before you could criticize anything, right? You need to see at least the initial results. The honeymoon period is the tolerance of how long you are willing to wait and see before you no longer have any patience and you want to see significant changes and you want to see significant results. That's really the honeymoon phase. At what point will you not be operating under any sort of perception deficit, any sort of lack of goodwill from the public, any sort of impatience, any sort of assumptions of the negative, because, you know, politicians are politicians, and we assume all of them to be corrupt. When will those things kick in? The honeymoon period is the before all of that, when the people would be more willing to wait, to listen, to, if necessary, to forgive. But the more forgiving they have to do, the more of your honeymoon capital you're using up. The honeymoon period is a key point in time because since people are more receptive, you have a better chance to change narrative, to change perceptions, and dare I say, to change the emotional and mental perception and direction of the population, of how the whole country engages in political discussion, in the political process, in the process of governance. Now is the time when you have the best chance to change the nature of the conversation. And hopefully it's not squandered. But it's not just the government that has that window. The opposition has it too, both for the nation as well as for themselves. Both sides do. Will it be squandered? And this is where I have concerns for Penelope Beckles. I fear that her opportunity of this initial period where you're a blank slate and people don't necessarily, they're not going to use their assumptions and apply it, and they're not necessarily as quick to judge just yet. Yeah, the diehards will be the diehards and they'll be quick to judge all the time. But the opposition has that honeymoon period too with the public. And I am concerned that potentially some members of her party might be squandering what should be her capital. Now, I don't know. They say they're going to have an inter-election sooner rather than later. Will that also include the post of political leader? And if that happens, will the opposition leader have to change? Because it seems as though certain political ambitions within the PNM, they're using this time as an opportunity to rise up, which is hilarious given the fact that in most cases, one could argue they directly contributed to the defeat of the party. And I won't say who exactly I'm talking about. But it's not just one person. And I'll leave it at that. Let's move on to the next topic. And speaking about the internal election for the PNM, they elected a new chairman and vice chairman in order to conduct their internal elections. The new chairman is Dr. Nayan Gatsby-Dolly. She is the MP for St. Anne's East. And she was seen in some circles as a potential successor or someone who was being groomed for a senior role in the party, given she was a deputy political leader. And that's what's interesting. The vice chairman and chairman were the two deputy political leaders that Dr. Keith Rowley technically dismissed on his way out. What this does is this potentially kind of shows it wasn't necessarily a dismissal in any sort of way to signal falling out of favor or falling out of popularity. Now, they were selected, I believe, by the General Assembly. Gatsby-Dolly, she had a challenger by the mayor of Port of Spain, and it was a close decision, 60 to 58 in favor of Gatsby-Dolly. That's interesting. And it makes me wonder just what is the perception internally of their situation. But also, the vice chairman is an old face, MP for, I believe, Digger Martin East, Carl Mimbert. Now, Mr. Mimbert had something very, very interesting to say. Very interesting to say. And I'm trying to find it here. But essentially, I believe he said something to the effect of, he's here to some extent, help the party transition. They're supposed to have internal elections soon. And This is the quote, "We didn't think it was a good idea to have just 3 people given that burden, that responsibility to manage the process going forward. Now we are 5. I did not go for the position of chairman because I felt like it is time for the younger people in the party to come forward, and I will not be contesting a position in the next interior election." That's an interesting quote. It's counter to the policy of just the previous internal administration, where the senior ministers and members of cabinet, they also took, to some extent, not all of them arguably are senior members of cabinet, but it is what it is, they also took major internal positions. Now, I don't necessarily know what this means for Mr. Imbert's political career in government office. He's an opposition MP. Is he going to try for another term or not? We don't know. Once politicians reach a certain age, it just becomes a question that you have because of that. Will they have the energy and the desire to keep going? But I can appreciate, as much as I've criticized Mr. Imbert with regards to the Auditor General fiasco, because it was a fiasco, let's make that clear. But this statement here, we have an internal election. Whoever goes up for internal office, because we don't have ministerial portfolios anymore, so whoever goes up for internal office in the opposition PNM party will be positioned to be senior members of the PNM moving forward. And what he's saying is, let the young people have a turn, I'm not on that. To some extent, that's a message that they tried to give during the transition of Dr. Heath Rowley to Stuart Young. But it didn't necessarily always seem to work out quite that way effectively, because not all of the candidates, the young new candidates selected, they're not all equal. Let's just put it that way. But I find it interesting that even a political veteran like Com Imbert, to some extent, the tone of his message is a little bit different. And I think whether you believe that this is a genuine sentiment from him or not, I think that doesn't matter for me to say that I think he's reading the room a little bit better than some of his peers maybe. Understands the situation that the PNM is in, understands his situation, and is adjusting his statements to suit. And dare I say, doing so for the benefit of the party and not just for himself. Which is not something that I could say for everybody right now. And I like that. And this is one of those things, politics has a morality on its own. So I don't like to speak in absolute terms. I said that earlier, right? Yes, I have situations that I think Mr. Imbert did a disservice to the nation. But I'm judging his statement for what it is right here, right now. It's better than what I've heard from some of his peers. It's the type of messaging that's in line, I believe, with what his opposition leaders say. And more importantly, I think it's what the people need to hear. Some PNM supporters actually might not want to hear something like this. They might not want to see the nature of their party changed. The perception of their party changed. The mindset of their leadership of their party changed. But I think it does need to change, and I think this statement, at the very least, does not go against any potential change. And dare I say, it is a minor support for it. Back to Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly. She is a young politician. She's, of course, a woman at a time when the demographics of our politics is in a very interesting place, where a lot of senior positions are being held by women, even though there is some lamentation that cabinet doesn't have as much women as some people might think it should. And of course, the Prime Minister is a woman, the opposition leader is a woman, the President is a woman. Of course, her term eventually will come up. I don't know if she'll continue to be president or if they'll get a new president. Maybe it'll be a woman, maybe it will be a man, we don't know. There's also rumors that the head of the Senate might be a former female senator, although we got the trade minister wrong, so from the media did. So we don't know how true that's going to be, or maybe that was going to be the case and then decisions were changed last minute. We don't know how, we have to wait and see how that comes out. Parliament is going to convene, I believe, in the middle of the month. That's what the Prime Minister or the AG said. But to some extent, Dr. Gatsby-Dolly, she's now, at least for now, in the interim, a senior member of the party. will she offer, man or woman? She is a young politician. I believe some of the criticism against her was not necessarily fair. If you want to talk about how the Ministry of Education was run, to some extent, and I'll go back to this, and we should remember this also when we judge the current administration, depending on how they seem to make certain decisions. Under Dr. Keith Rowley, Cabinet or the Minister of Finance, they decided on budgets. Budgets had a big deal to factor in on the ability for any ministry to perform. Maybe Dr. Gatsby-Dolly could have communicated better. We don't know. We don't know. To some extent, as a younger politician, I mean, we've seen Stuart Young's inexperience now rearing its ugly head. We've seen Reginald Lamore's inexperience kind of undermine his attempts to be Attorney General. Let's just say it like that. Part of this whole exercise is someone like Dr. Gatsby-Dolly could learn and grow from adversity. One of the things that made Dr. Keith Rowley, however you felt about him, what made him to be the politician he was, and as good as he was, because at least on a curve, he was a good politician locally, was the fact that he had to go through struggle. It wasn't all just victory, and it wasn't all just quick victory. And some of the new politicians in both parties, they might not really understand what that means. But in the PNM at least, now they understand. Are they taking the right message out of it? All right, let's just run through the last couple of stories quick. First, one of the holdovers from the previous administration is the refugees, the TNT nationals in Syria. I'm not going to talk long about this. I'll just say this. I know a lot of people disagree with me, and this is one of those things where the longer it takes, and maybe it's past the point of no return, because now we have potentially radicalized adult young TNT men in these refugee camps. It's taken that long that they have aged to the point where now you might say they are a security threat. But it wasn't always that way. More importantly, I have a hard time accepting any commentary to say leave them there, we don't want them here, because I don't think the principles hold up. I think it's selective ideology. Their fathers said, let's go. Even if the mothers agreed, did the children have agency in that decision? And again, I get it. It might be past the point where the children are safe to bring and there'll be no issues at all. But dare I say, maybe that's just a price we have to pay if we want to uphold our own values. Because to some extent, if it was you, you would want help in this situation. That's ultimately the perspective I have. They were children. If you were the child there, you didn't have a say in what happened. You didn't have a say of where you ended up. You didn't have a say of where you grew up. But they're our nationals. If it was your child or if you were the child, what would you want done? Don't assume that somehow you would always be morally superior than the other person. As one commentator on a separate topic pointed out, as one psychologist pointed out, don't assume you would save Anne Frank. Don't assume you would be Schindler in Schindler's List. Because statistically speaking, most people will conform. Most people will conform to whatever situation they find themselves in. Most people will not stick their neck out and be the hero and risk everything. Or in this case, most people will not necessarily succumb to the circumstances that they find themselves having inflicted upon them. And I'll leave that there. It'll be interesting to see where the new administration goes with this situation. At the very least, I would hope that they will communicate a better explanation as to what's going on and be more transparent. Even if they're basically going to leave them in limbo. At least fess up to what you're doing. Because the previous administration, this is one area that and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. At this point, I don't care about it. Because if there are going to be negative consequences, I think ultimately we deal with the negative consequences of our crime situation. We have to, right? We can't run away from it. So why is it now it's convenient for us to abandon these kids who are now probably young men and women, and let's just abandon them, right? Because it's easier for us to abandon them. They mean nothing to us. What does that say now? The precedent that sets is when the going gets tough, we are willing to abandon our own people. Just like when we had COVID. We didn't secure the borders, but we abandoned some people who got stuck outside. Yeah, fend for yourself. That's a you problem. Nice. If society is willing to do that now, it's give an inch, they'll take a mile. The precedent will eventually sneak up on us, and then we wonder, why is it that no one is willing to help anyone anymore? Because we don't have that mindset. That's one of the things I envy America about. You want to bad talk the USA? Yeah, but they don't abandon their own citizens. At least not all administrations. Right, sorry. Next story, quick. The president of the Nursing Association, he's warning against reopening or redesignating the Couva Hospital as a children's hospital because of a nursing shortage and what he believes to be a lack of demand. Edie Stewart, I get that. I understand where he's coming from. I think this might be a difference of policy on how to run public health. And this is one of those things where I understand it was a UNC project and maybe it's low-hanging fruit that she wants to do it. So I don't even know if it makes sense to have a designated specialized hospital, to be honest, because think about it. To some extent, that's what they did. If your child's sick, go to Mount Hope. I get that. But really, I would argue, not in all cases, certain specialists, you don't have multiple people for it to spread around the country, but you should have certain amount of pediatric care in hospitals in the north for people in the north, in hospitals in the south for people in the south, and dare I say, there are not many, but hospitals in the east, I believe mainly in the northeast, for people in the east. Because what are you going to do in an emergency? And there's look, even the prime minister was delayed by an accident to the swearing of her own cabinet. You mean to say that always, there will always be a way through for an ambulance? There will never be a time when there will be some situation that's going to limit the response time or increase the response time rather, or the travel time for an emergency vehicle that could impact the health of a critically ill patient. I'll leave that there. We don't have time to go into it more. I'll leave that there. But I will listen to the president of the Nursing Association, though, because he's a stakeholder. And when he says there's a nursing shortage and a shortage of nursing specialists, he didn't say about doctors, but I would assume that is potentially on the table as well. I will listen to him. Last but not least, 2 more ministers were sworn in. This includes the highly anticipated Minister of Trade, Industry and Tourism. Now, I find it interesting because the new Minister for Trade, he is a well-known, well-respected businessman, and similar to the Minister of Planning, similar to the Attorney General, dare I say, as an older gentleman who has not been part of politics within the last 5 to 10 years, my assumption is, this is Minister Kama Miraj, because I don't want to, that's what he's known by. I don't want to mispronounce his proper first name, so please forgive me. Ministers like Mr. Miraj, that are not necessarily engaged with politics like a full-time politician, who's older, I don't think they have personal political agendas or personal political aspirations where, and when is it that they're going to try to be political leader. I don't think they have that. I could be wrong. I think their aspirations is they want to be in politics to do a job. That's my take on it. That's the signal I'm getting. I could be very wrong, but that's what I get with George Jeremy as AG. That's what I get with the new Minister of Trade. That's what I get with the Minister of Planning and Economic Affairs and Development. And these are the appointments that I like, because the signal it gives me is that it's about the actual business and not about what political favors we have to pass out, who we need to reward for their loyalty, what politicking we need to do in order to keep the balance of power and all of that nonsense. who have aspirations for higher office and want to get a higher position and all of that. So I'll say that there. I have a lot of hope. One thing though, I don't know to what extent he is aware of tourism, and this is one of the reasons why putting two ministries together. I think overall I don't like it. I don't think there's enough overlap. I will say this, I think there should be a minister in the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Tourism to help push it. I don't necessarily think it needs to be someone that specializes in tourism so that that person is pigeonholed only in tourism. But ideally, it would be someone who understands tourism. It could be a business owner that works, you know, to some degree with the tourism industry, with the hotel industry, or the airline industry, or a businessman in Tobago, maybe. Doesn't have to be a hotelier. Could be a supplier. Could be a retailer. I don't know. Someone who has a bit of knowledge with regards to business in a general sense, and distribution channels and all of that, but also tourism, if the new minister doesn't have that much experience in tourism. And ladies and gentlemen, being an experienced traveler is not necessarily, but it could be, but not necessarily making you experienced in the industry of tourism. Now, the other minister was a second minister in the Ministry of Housing, Philip Edward Alexander. He is the second junior minister. We were waiting to see if or what appointments he would get. To some extent, at some point, we thought maybe he'll get a board appointment. It's interesting that he is a third minister. I don't know if he'll have a specialized portfolio. Given his professional life, this might be right up his alley, and this might show a point of emphasis that this is a major part of the administration's agenda. Although I don't know if I necessarily could agree with the agenda, depending on how it's implemented and how housing is going to be distributed among the population. Because to some extent, we can't necessarily afford freeness, and in this case, it's not in the context of absolute freeness, but rather just discounted whatever. I know that there's demand for it. I know there might even be a need for it. But if government is providing things that the private sector could provide for, in the long run, that's not always a good sign. That could be a bad sign, because it means that your private sector is in an unhealthy position, and government is not the most efficient actor with regards to anything. But you tolerate the inefficiency because there are certain things that private sector can't provide you. So you need the government to provide for you. You don't want private sector to provide policing for you. But with regards to housing, if they're not efficient, it's not necessarily the best results. I understand some people don't care, but it is what it is. We can't afford the freeness like how we used to. That's what the indicators are. More on Philip after this. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll have a last point to make with regards to the politics of the day, something that was revealed by his statements after being sworn in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We are small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
I think the list needs evaluating because it's a long list and it's an old list. There have been people who have spoken to me over the years that have their number and their name on that list 25 years. So at some point we have to make it make sense, and I think that should be the first order of business, to see what exactly is the size of the problem we need to solve and get down to the business of solving it.
And the quality of public housing, is that something that would also be a focus, at least the units that will be built going forward?
Absolutely. I remember under the People's Partnership government, that was a mainstay to make sure that the quality of the properties were to the standard, and it wasn't just we weren't building ghetto complexes. And I think that would also be a big part in this administration going forward.
My question would actually be, now you have collective cabinet responsibility, and you've made your name as a very outspoken, no holds barred. Have you been briefed at all by Honourable Prime Minister? Well, Philip, you may have to start to tone it down upon taking office.
I want to tell you this, I am first and foremost a team player, and I am very good at taking my cues from seniors. That said, I know the Honourable Kamala Prasad Bissessa SC knew who I was when she brought me into the mix, and yes, there have been a couple of times when she would say, rethink that comment, and I'm figuring out her tenor, her tone, and aligning myself with that. There are some things that I see going on in the public space that I'd like to respond to, but that's not my responsibility right now, and I have to be mindful of that.
It's almost like if you can't recognize him. And dare I say, it makes you wonder, was it a persona all the time? Or was he playing to the crowd being what a lot of people think local politics is? Shout, 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 rah, 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 bubble, 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 outrageous claim. Because again, if you are more confident and loud, people think, oh, you know what you're talking about. But from my perspective, this sounds like a man that knows what he's talking about. Because the first part was basically all the things that I wanted to hear from the incoming government. We need to look at the situation and assess it. And he already understands part of the problem. It's an old list, it's a long list, and dare I say, this is going to be a situation that's going to have parallels in other ministries, where you're going to have situations where people are on a waiting list based on old policy and it's taking too long, and then there might have been multiple policy changes and the whole situation is more confusing, and people are not getting services in a timely or efficient manner. It's about the ease of doing business, but also what about private citizens getting their due? Similar to the FER situation. And that's just one example. So he's identifying, look, it's not all roses and sunshine and bunnies and rainbows. So we're going to have to see what the problem is and then move in. But then he was asked a very direct question about him, his personality, his commentary, how he presents himself. And to be fair to him, he's not just saying this now and we're like, yeah, right, Philip, it's, you know. During the campaign trail, people have told me, and I took note of it myself, he wasn't the most rah-rah. It wasn't the rah-rah Philip. It was a more toned down Philip, showing that, listen, I understand what's going on now, right? I don't need to capture your attention with something outrageous anymore. Now I have an opportunity to affect change, and I need to take it seriously. That's what it looks like to me. Maybe that's not what it is. We have to let him disprove that. But to some extent, and we have to understand the morality of politics. This is probably who he is. He's given us one version of himself for years, and now he's giving us this version of himself. But they both could be him. It's not to say that it's inauthentic. But the real issue is the UNC won, which means the coalition of interest technically won, which means that even though he didn't win his seat, Philip Alexander is on the winning side. And he has taken lessons from the process of campaigning, some of which apparently came from the Prime Minister herself. He's not allowing victory to say, yeah, we've arrived and I could just go to town and it's my time now because it's we time now and who cares about all you, the losers, we's the winners. And he ain't running with that. They won, and ironically, he's presenting a more humble version of himself in victory. And to some extent, it's like what I was trying to say about Common Bit. All of my criticisms of Mr. Imbit don't go away, but that sentiment in the moment, I could appreciate it. And I want to encourage it for more politicians to have a thought process like that. Maybe it might be limited to him alone in that one instance, and maybe it might be similar to Mr. Alexander, but he deserves all the opportunity, because we've never seen him, I believe, in public office, right? He deserves all the opportunity to prove or disprove. But more importantly, one of the things, because a lot of people is like, why are you praising them for this when they did this negative thing? The reason why, even if there are negative things to their name, like Mr. Imbit, that I still want to praise the positives whenever they come up, whenever I could speak about them, wherever I could find them, is because I want to encourage the positive. I want to show that when you do things that I like and appreciate and find useful and constructive, I want to give the reward of acknowledgement, of appreciation. So it hopefully encourages you to keep down that path. Because the Prime Minister was doing it. Other ministers now were doing it. I won't say all, but it's not as though we've seen a lot of bubble coming from the government just yet. A lot of it is wait and see, right? Yes, the Whitehall and the debt things notwithstanding. But now Philip comes in, he's an outspoken person, and dare I say, he might get a proper direction for communication more than a lot of his peers, because he's been hitting the media trail. He's been basically exposing himself to the scrutiny of the media. He's been on multiple interviews and on morning shows within the last 2 weeks. These are things that a lot of politicians would shy away from. And especially given the fact that he has a history that could easily be used against him. But he ain't hiding from that, because he understands what's required in the moment, at least right now, in my opinion. Will he be able to sustain it? I hope so. I can't say that he will or he won't. I can't guarantee that. I already explained why I won't. You know, that's not in my nature. But I hope so, and I want to encourage it. And I hope that more politicians will do like what he did. I think Roger Alexander also is a good example of someone at least is starting off in a good place with how he communicates, his style of communication. He doesn't come across as rah-rah and bacchanal. I can't say the same for all of the opposition. I'm seeing more things out of the opposition than out of the government that are maybe clues or indicators of arrogance. From the concession speech, not Dr. Heath Rowley's concession speech, I had no problem with that. Well, I can't say that I fully recall everything he said that night, but I actually have no problem with what he said that night. I found it was very fitting of him to come up, and he didn't shy away from it at all, and I actually was quite impressed. And to be fair, Tracy Davis' lesson did the same thing, and I appreciate that. It's an acknowledgement of reality, not trying to hide or sugarcoat it. They lost, he said they lost, he ain't trying to play no games, and then he said, I take the blame. I'm the political leader, it's on me. I could appreciate that. I don't know if everybody now that's left in the PNM fully understood the situation they're in as their former political leader did, as their current opposition leader does, and as some of their membership do. Because there are some who seemingly are clinging to power, are trying to elevate their profile even though they lost in the election, one way or the other. Elevating their profile in a manner which I would argue might not necessarily be appropriate if it's not necessarily following the leadership and the direction of the political leader. Now, I'm not saying you had to be lemmings and everything had to be approved by the leader, and you should have the ability to have some individual judgment and initiative, but I wonder if it's maybe going a little bit too far. There's a couple more things that I could mention, but we do have a call on the line right now, so we'll take the call first. Good morning, caller, you're on air.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I would like to highlight about WhatsApp, please.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, yesterday I went to WhatsApp to pay a WhatsApp bill. And we are not in the middle of the month yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they telling me that how they want to charge me over $300. And the amount for the bill is $150. So what I'm trying to do is to double charge customers.
Is that
so
it?
What do you think of that?
Is that all? Because you could listen off air, or do you have any more follow-ups that you might want to say after? Because, all right.
No, I will listen off air.
Okay, thank you, caller. What I think is, this is a sign of what's wrong with the public service, but not necessarily what you think it is. Although it could be. It could be both, or maybe it could be your perception or my perception. What I think it is they have a system, and the system is rigid, or the workers themselves don't want to go outside the system because that's too much work. So you want to pay $150, they want $300, and I think that has to do with workflow and processes, and dare I say, either a rigid system and the inability to explain what needs to be done to the public, which is bad, because they should have training in order to do that, and have understanding that they need to do it, when it's a situation that the public might not understand without any explanation. Or laziness. They want to process the month. That's from what I understand. They want to process, if your monthly bill is $300, they want to process the month, right? If your monthly bill is $150, then, so, either way, one of the issues that I will be looking at with a critical eye, one of the issues that I'm not going to have a honeymoon period on, is WASA, because the coalition of interest includes labor, which includes specifically the PSA. One of the promises on the campaign was certain promises to labor, which I think were premature, given the fact that the UNC didn't know, weren't fully aware of the government's financial position, right? That's what they're saying now. We have to look and see what's going on before we could make certain decisions, which is reasonable. And that's why I had issues with some of those promises off the bat. That's why I had questions on how they're going to finance some of these things, because I knew that they weren't going to know what the actual financial position of the government, of the state was in. So how could he make those promises without, at the very least, having a plan of what we're going to cut or where we're going to get revenue, which they couldn't give us. The new Minister of Finance, he tried to give an explanation. It wasn't really a direct explanation, right? And one of the things they said about WASA is they're going to shelve the parliamentary subcommittee report. And I have an issue with that, because that just assumes that WASA is fine. And I don't think WASA is fine, because too many people have complaints about various issues. We have a call on WhatsApp. Let's take the call. Good morning, caller, on here.
Yeah, morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning. Great program. And don't know what I'm hearing myself, but anyway. I know Auntie Kamala did mention publicly to all the ministers and them, and she had the record for firing corrupt ministers now. Unlike the past regime, like the Darius Smiths and then Al-Rari with the court matter with witness and thing and gave him out liberty without consulting his superiors and all these kind of things. But I also wanted to shift on a slightly different note pertaining to the gentleman. I think he represented those nurses put it for the hospitals, talking about the Couva hospital is not needed because the Mount Hope is 50% capacity and all of that. But my wife and I had a child back in 1988, born with a lot of heart issues, and we could not get the surgery done here. So after we took a year and raised $12,000 to go to the Joe DiMaggio Hospital with her in Miami, Florida, for her first temporary surgery, which cost $12,000, and then work with her when she getting sick, rushing out of Mount Hope. My wife living back and forth in Mount Hope, and it's pressure for till she reached 10 years old now, because we had to raise $51,000 to take her back to the hospital in Miami again, because she need a whole lot of different things to be done. She needed us to grow and get size. So when we reach the 10-year period now, car raised the $51,000. We didn't have the money. The doctor put us on to a doctor which is connected to the team of doctors around the world, which is called Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah.
They travel to Caribbean countries and work with the local doctors where they have the facilities, so that Caribbean people wouldn't have that burden. The money we raised wasn't even half of the $51,000. And when we called to this doctor, he said, okay, the money we have, he would accept that. And we met the team of doctors in the Dominican Republic, where they came 30 of them from all parts of the world, Bogota, England, America, you name it, around the world, and analyze our daughter. And so the surgery was done there. So this foolish man who was representing these nurses, who never had a child that went through this, I wish God forbid he don't go through that the Couva Hospital will be able to facilitate surgeries like this for poor people in Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean countries who cannot afford. And the government will be connected with the team of Doctors Without Borders, and there are other charitable teams that will travel to Trinidad and Tobago and make our doctors more qualified in doing the surgeries that are performed abroad, which cannot be done here. So God forbid that man and his family who say about talking nonsense about the Couva Hospital, I hope he and his family never have a child with heart issues.
Okay, caller.
That's it.
Thank you, caller.
That's it. Have a great day. Bye.
I'll just say this. I very much understand what you're going to say. I thought you were going to say something different. I understand your concerns. On a technical level, though, I think you're not necessarily debating what the President of the Nursing Association was debating. I do know, I have somebody I was speaking to where he doesn't believe the President saying it's only 50% capacity. That might be something that the public would have a different perception on the available capacity of the pediatric wards in Mount Hope and I believe San Fernando. and that could be debatable. What you just said there, I have an explanation to give, but we have a Rima on the line, so I'll take the call first. We also have some comments to discuss, so we'll get to the comments after the call. Good morning, caller, you're on here. Morning, caller.
Sean, morning. With respect to the guy you call about the water bill, I suspect that he's a senior citizen because if his bill is like 150, that is the arrangement for senior citizens.
Right.
Now, if he goes to WASA and there's a bill for 300, there's a cycle. WASA bill is every 3 months, so there's a cycle. So they would not tell him that he has to pay the $300. He could pay what he has because they will take anything. And when the cycle is up, then he will know that he has to go and pay the other 150.
Caller, I would say this. We've seen instances where customer service representatives have said things that contradicted what the government policy was. Case in point, the Registrar General's office in Tobago was telling people you have to go to Trinidad. When Trinidad central government was saying, and the Registrar General was saying, no, that's not, the whole point of the office was to do things in Tobago. So I will say this, I suspect, or I fear, that the caller may have, not guaranteeing that he was, but may have literally been told what the caller said he was told directly. I understand what you're saying, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
But one of the issues is we've reached the point now where we can't say that we will assume the public servant, all customer service public servants, would say the right thing. I've been fortunate where I haven't necessarily had too many bad dealings, potentially, but I have had family members that ran into very similar horrible experiences. So that's kind of the reality we live in. But I take your point. It is a good point, and you could be correct.
Well, let me just add one thing quickly. The day before yesterday, I went to pay my water bill. And they told me that my cycle haven't reached yet, and I have paid for this bill that I brought in. It was paid already.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. No, and the thing is, and this is where the problem is, this is not necessarily a WASA problem per se. It could be an HR management problem. This could be you spoke to someone else.
I spoke to the cashier.
Right, but my point is, you spoke to someone who potentially did their job better than whoever the previous caller spoke to. Potentially, right? You could be right in the sense of, because this happens a lot. The public doesn't understand what they're being told. I've seen this happen firsthand, and they kind of go with the wrong impression. That could also be the case too, but I don't want to make that assumption given what I've seen and heard, right? I don't think it's constructive to dismiss the previous caller's assertions at this point.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
But thank you for the call, because it's good to have counterpoints so that we properly frame issues when they're presented to us. So thank you for that, Mr. Rima. We have another caller from WhatsApp on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Okay, well, so far so good, because every time I've used this WhatsApp number so far, I keep getting an echo. No echo today. Right.
We're not getting the echo, so don't worry.
You all don't get it, but we get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Listen, Sean, I've told you before, and I will tell you again. You are young, eh? So I get in the echo. Anyway, and I always tell you that in some respects you are naive, and I can handle that. But and let me explain what I mean. I heard you speaking about Mr. Carmenbut a while ago, and that he said certain things, and you agree with what he said in some areas. Let me just give you my view on Carmenbut. Carmenbut should not be in government. It should not be in opposition. We, as a people, we take things. I have to admit that what happened at the election showed that some of us showed the last government clearly, hey, we're not standing for what you give us. But Carmenbut, Sean, remember, this is a man who set 3 different deadlines for property tax to be paid. Had people lining up like sheep because the government needed money.
Yeah.
He set 3 deadlines, and all 3 deadlines he put in place. He knew that they were not practical. Sean, to date, I have not gotten my, forget what they call it. I haven't gotten anything to pay. To date. And everybody seems to have forgotten that that man should be totally run out of office because he showed.
Paula,
go ahead. Listen.
Just to be quick, I don't think that was a come in bed decision. A lot of the time, it was a cabinet decision. He might have been a chief player in making that decision, but most ministry decisions, I don't think are done solely at the behest of the individual minister.
I hear you, Sean, but the other thing is his attitude.
Yeah.
He displays a very dismissive attitude and a disrespectful attitude, and that he can't escape blame for what happened, and he was one of the architects, or he was the person that we seen. He is the minister, and we are seeing and we are hearing him. And I'm saying that people have to pay. You make the government pay, but you have to make individuals pay also. But anyhow, let me change that one. Let me go back on to my pet peeve, noise pollution. Sean, when the opposition leader at the time could have raised the specter or the issue or the scourge of noise pollution in her campaign, it tells you something about that other government. The government, all this time when people were complaining over those 10 years and even before about noise pollution, you realize that the PNM government totally ignored that. We got nobody from in parliament even recognizing the problem. I wonder sometimes if Trinidadians really look at these things. No one from that last government, even in the government, in the administration, ever spoke about it, or everybody just dismissed it, and they allowed the EMA and the police service to be the ones fielding questions and making all kind of excuses and mamagayanas and insulting our intelligence. And I'm in the fight long enough to tell you that I know the majority of these people were lying to us and insulting our intelligence. And I want to say now that I'm going to be calling on the Prime Minister. I'm going to be calling on that gentleman who is now the Homeland Security, because he was on Beyond the Tape, and I used to be calling and speaking to him all the time. And I'm going to be also calling on the Attorney General. Deal with this matter as soon as possible. This matter is not going to cost any money. This matter is just a matter of tweaking the law so that police, and I want to make it clear to these people now, don't come and tell me nothing about the EMA. The EMA is to handle events. The police service has to handle neighborhood.
Okay, caller. Caller, thank you for that. But we have another caller waiting. Okay. So we'll have to go to the next caller. I'll respond to all of that after the next caller. Yes, we still have the comments to respond to, but after the call. Good morning, caller. You on here? Do we have the caller?
Thanks.
Morning, caller.
Yeah, morning, Sean. I call back because I was sound so passionate just now. Right? But what I want to say, the 50% capacity in Mount Hope, that could only help children. If the children sick and they taken home, you could only take them there to try to do the best for them. You can't do an emergency surgery or anything like that for them, because the surgeries must be performed abroad. You see?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
So that is the, I may have misinterpreted a bit what the guy is saying. When he said 50% capacity, they could only try to put children on life support or something. They can't do nothing in Trinidad for them, nothing. So we need the facility in Couva to be doing the surgeries that we have to travel abroad to get done. You know? So that is what I wanted to make clear.
Right, but I do have a response, because I think the nature of the debate, there might be some things you're not considering, in that we don't actually need a dedicated children's hospital to have pediatric ability. Part of why the president of the Nurses Association was saying don't do it is because they don't have enough nurses potentially to properly staff.
Yeah, we know, if you're going to open a hospital, obviously with cater for things, but we need to come up to the world standard levels now.
But caller, the thing is, you could have different. You don't need to be a cancer hospital to have a cancer wing, right?
Okay.
So so if we care about the certain specialties for pediatric medicine, we don't need a specialized hospital for that. And I think the obstacle for that is more trying to figure out how to get the proper staff, because we have an issue with specialist doctors as well as a nursing shortage.
I understand that. I understand that. I understand what you're saying.
So that's the thing. I don't think he was against pediatric care in the country, but at this point...
But we need it urgently because we see now the parents constantly crying out and not making the money.
You
see? That is the point.
Now, the thing is, where criticism is fair and the 50% point...
I want to be fair, you know.
Right.
I want to be fair to everybody.
And where I thought you was going is, I know someone who has recently had young children, and he disagrees that Mount Hope and San Fernando, they're underutilized, right? And this could be where you might need another pediatric wing. But
that is a good. Well, okay. Agreed. Get these surgeries done here. This is what we want to fly out. That is what we want.
Well, you see, consider this, caller. Even in the United States, people go across the country of the U.S., and it's a big country, to see certain specialists. So certain cities, even cities with a larger population than us, won't have all these specialties. So now one of the challenges for health, I would agree with you in this though, potentially.
I think in 2025 we need to be more advanced.
Well, especially in pediatrics. And
especially in that
care
we having too much issues. May have this bleed for these children, but then you come out and the parents saying, "But can't make the money," and then the child go dead. It has no kind of chance for them, boy. Oh God, boy, Sean, boy. But may have this hurt me for them children. Look at the Sarah policy children with this last regime throw them people out in the street. It's so shameful, man.
Although
man.
I will caution this, it is very difficult for public health to provide very expensive and underutilized specialties. This could be where we should consider some sort of dialogue with CARICOM, so that CARICOM could say...
because other countries doing it already. They're connected with with the foreign doctors.
We don't need... No, well, not just that. If we want to have local ability, we don't need every country to have every capability.
No,
but if
we could go in somewhere in the Caribbean. Yeah, agreed, totally.
All right, thank you, caller. Sorry, but I have a lot to get through.
Have a great day, bye.
You too. Now, with that said, to the caller with regards to Minister Imbit, ironically, you ran into the point I was trying to make. It was not about brushing all of the negatives of Mr. Imbit under the rug. It was about, look, if we keep condemning politicians, they will say, well, what's the point of me trying to be better? I'll just continue being whatever I was before that you didn't like. I'll just continue to do that because you'll criticize me either way. So why should I try to appease you? And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I get that. To some extent, he still needs to answer, in my opinion, for the Auditor General situation. I don't know if he ever will. And maybe my comments, in a way, was to encourage other politicians even more than it was to encourage him. To say, look, here you have a politician that's willing to tone down himself in the moment, at the very least, in that specific moment. The rest of you, be more like that. Do that. Take that away. Don't follow the rest of the example that we've seen previously, right? That's what I was trying to say, because I feel as though sometimes the PNM administration, because they themselves don't know, so they just respond to you in a very defensive way, emotionally, because they don't know, they don't have the, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, the maturity to understand, let's not shoot from the hip and denigrate and bad talk and bully people when we don't like the response of what we're saying. Let's not do that. Let's be professional. We don't have that because the nature of our politics has not been that for quite some time. And we don't necessarily have statesmen like Mr. Manning or Mr. Pandey. Well, maybe Kamala and Penelope Beckles, maybe they will be the stateswomen to bring back a little bit of decorum in our politics. We have Arima. I don't know if it's the same caller from Arima back on the line or a new Arima. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Morning, Sean. Morning.
Morning.
I want to disagree with you in full.
Sure. Where?
We have need for the hospitals, especially our children's hospital. And I will tell you why. Now, throw back your mind 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hold on, caller, let me caution, right? One of the problems with saying 20 years ago is I don't think our public health system is in the same place that it was 20 years ago.
All right, well, my take is this, right? The diseases that you're seeing now, You wasn't seeing them 20 years ago. The autism and the ADHD and furthermore, the New World Order is food, arms, and drugs. The drugs is pharmaceuticals because the new one now is disease. So in going forward, you have to project your country to, how to say it, not to be reactionary, but to be proactionary. And furthermore, every year we have more than 200 doctors graduating in this country. Many Caribbean islands do have that. We have that. So let us make use of what we have. Because if these children do have to go away to get surgeries, people in other islands can come here once we have the facilities. Thank you. Have a good day, Sean.
No, but caller, I think you're running to a similar mistake that the previous caller was. Pediatric care and a children's hospital are technically not the same thing.
I understand that. But look at the amount of babies that died in Port of Spain.
Yeah, but you won't have expectant mothers going to Couva Hospital. Like Couva Hospital will not take all the the new births.
Don't get me wrong, you know. What I am saying is this: there is need for this thing.
Right, but my point is
there's also need to upgrade the nurses and pay them fully.
My point
which
is
I agree with.
Right, but my point is it doesn't have to be in the form of a specialized hospital. I do think that the hospital in Couva might need to stay open as a hospital to provide health care, and it could provide pediatric care on top of that. But I don't know if it needs to be specialized.
Sorry to interrupt you, but in terms of economic development, if you want to develop your country, these are some of the things that we need going forward.
But you see, no, this is where I think
it's the next disease to come out, you know.
I know, but this is the thing. I would prefer that the pediatric capability of the country be split so that there would be a proper pediatric wing in the north, in the south, and in central, because if we're going to concentrate it in Couva, what that says is, for a lot of things, everybody has to make their way to Couva to get their child certain medical care. And I would much rather we have a hospital in not in Port of Spain, but in the north, right? And we try to give as much capabilities and spread it out and decentralize it rather than centralize it. Decentralization is the thing that I am not sure about. The actual pediatric ability, that's different.
I ain't sure about it neither, but what I'm telling you, seeing going forward, that is a brilliant idea for this country. Let me don't fight it out. But
because part of it is you're going to have to retransition the hospital back. That's the other thing. Although it wasn't technically a fully children's hospital in its creation. Half of the facilities were for adults.
We have the capacity here to train nurses, to train doctors.
Not specialists.
So,
not specialists.
Yes, and have specialists. So people do have to go abroad for surgeries.
Yeah, but
this thing could earn money.
Yes, but the problem is the doctors that graduate aren't specialists. That's where the shortfall for doctors are, for specialist doctors. And we need to understand. Like,
take it to the next step.
What I try to say, listen, you could have the west coast of America, whose population easily eclipses us, does not have all of the medical specialists. They have people that go coast to coast, right? That's no different from a country our size going to America for medical care. It's not. It's about scale. A population of 1.5 million people. There's no city of 1.5 million people that's going to have all world-class specialists. The fact that we're an independent country does not make the economics easier, right? It's a challenge that we have to try to overcome because there are practical necessities in the country. But I think people were underestimating what the challenge is, because the challenge is just sheer economics. There are not that many specialists to go around the world. And it's not easy to entice actual specialists of a certain level to come and reside in a small country as ours when they would rather go to some internationally famous hospital, right, where they potentially would have a more readily available. Look, a lot of doctors at the end of the day, they need to be reimbursed for the work that they put in to become the doctors that they become. And we might not like it, but economics plays a very big factor in healthcare. It does. There's no way around it because it's more of a human psychology and nature thing than a greedy capitalist thing. We don't have time to explain it because we have stuff to get through to. Caller, thank you for the call. I understand the passion, and I understand the passion behind it. I just think the conversation is now getting to a technical level where it's not just about what we would like, but how we could do it effectively and efficiently. And unfortunately, because we're not flush with unlimited funds, affordably. That's one of the, you'll never get away from that with a public health system. You will never get away from it. You need to be infinitely rich in order to do so, because that's what it will take. We have some comments to get through that we've been neglecting. Let's start with the first comment. I know we have about 5 comments to get through. So the first one, the removal of the revenue authority was a bad move. We need to collect taxes more efficiently. Jail those who do not file their tax return on the date to do so. Here's the thing. In theory, I agree with that. We need more details to really say, because I think the thing with healthcare, I believe the PNM had a way they wanted to do it. The UNC had a way they wanted to do it. Neither is necessarily incorrect, although sitting on the Kubo Hospital while building other hospitals potentially was not a good look. But that said, I think now there could be a world where the UNC has an alternative. But the reason why your criticism is valid is I do believe this is a political move because the unions. And I'll leave it there, right? But I understand why Kamala is going to do it, because to some extent she campaigned on it and she was voted in. So it's not necessarily the most accurate conclusion to give, but she has a mandate to fulfill the promises she made on the campaign trail. So it's, in a way, it's beyond politics now. It's a campaign promise and the people voted for her. So what's she going to do? I understand if she does it. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it. Next comment. It's Small without an S. Good day, Mr. Small. Good show. To be fair to Minister Philip, he has had several interviews over the last month where he stated exactly what you're speculating about. And then I think there's a follow-up. Let's go to the next. Yeah, there's a follow-up. He shouted to be heard because under the Dr. Rowley PNM, you're not listened to based on merit. Just look at all the associations, CBOs, and NGOs that always reported not getting a courtesy response. That is fair. But also, we need to be realistic. It's also the population and how the population responds to things. Let's understand. And it's not a Trinidad and Tobago issue. This is a worldwide issue. There's a reason why internationally clickbait titles and articles and sensational headlines, that's a thing in the worldwide media industry. Controversies sell more than long-form conversations that are introspective, detail-oriented, and highly technical. Sensational, bacchanal, even in foreign media, not just local media, not just in local discussion, not just in local forums, even abroad. So I understand he was conforming to a societal human reality, and he could prove that he's not just limited to that now. Let's go on to the next comment. Oh, the commenter continued. Philip said before the election and after that, being inside to govern is different from being outside to be heard by the last PNM. Yeah, and that's true. That's very true, right? So, and this is why I want to see the new administration be better. Will they do it? We have to wait and see. I'm hoping if they're not, I'm going to sound very similar to how I sounded. I'm just going to swap PNM for UNC. I hope I don't have to do that. I really don't want to do that. And that's why I try to encourage the things that I think are constructive. Last comment before we close out the show. It's a long comment, so I'll just have to read it out. One comment is basically saying that the double billing before mid-month, they have been doing that since before the year began, right? I explained the bill I was about to pay was paid in March and still paid and notarized. The next bill to be paid will be 3 months. They are double billing. It's a lazy, rich system. Once queried, a note should be attached to the client's accounts. TNTech never could give you information at the cashier, and the CSR line is always long, not private, and a long journal procedure. They need to do better in Europe. People paying bills and can't get a bill either because it's not on their name. However, one can prove actual living tendency. They presently have a monthly cycle bill payment inside, and their bills arrive late. So the commenter mentioned TNTech in the middle there. I'm not entirely sure if they're kind of giving commentary on both at the same time. But what the comment suggests is that the policies and procedures might not be consistent, or somebody's doing their own thing, or both. And when I say not consistent, officially it might not be consistent. I don't know. I don't know, right? The thing about not providing a bill, even though you could prove tenancy, I hate to say this, but look, you need to protect certain things. And if the bill isn't on your name, you have to go through the proper process to transfer it to your name if you want to see a bill. Otherwise, that's private information that they should not give out, even if you're a resident, because it's not in your name, right? You should not, because there will be instances where it's important to protect the privacy of the bill holder from another tenant or resident or what have you, right? So they're not wrong for that. Where they might be wrong is if the process to change the name on the bill is too arduous. If you haven't looked to put your name on the bill, I can't disagree with the utility company saying, your name is not in the bill, we can't give you the information. We can't give you a bill, right? Now, to some extent, let me roll that back. I don't know if it should go that far, but I guess generally, yes. Even your billing information and the amount due and what have you, because it also has things like address and maybe other private details and what have you, and it doesn't matter if you know all of it. As policy, certain things that are official documents should always be kept private only to the person who is entitled to it, right? It's a security thing. It's an identity theft security thing in part, I do believe, right? Because remember, a lot of things, they want a bill and then fraudsters can be very creative. And I understand that that's not where you're coming from, but unfortunately, you're kind of caught in that wake because security measures need to be blanket. You can't account for a whole set of exceptions because then you'll put too much holes in the measure and it won't be effective. And that's, I believe, where we will end the show today. I have one last thing to point out, and it is somewhat delicious in a way. Dr. Emery Brown paraphrased Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance where they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake authority. Congratulations to our nation's leader of the opposition, the Honorable Penelope Beckles-Robinson. Great is Trinidad and Tobago. Note that he's also paraphrasing the PNM phrase, not saying great is PNM. And apparently that caused maybe a situation with the former political leader and current member of the PNM, because he doesn't have an official role yet, Dr. Emery Brown, who was conspicuously left out of any sort of official seat for the sake of other young people who are significantly less known, with not as strong as a reputation as him. And maybe I will, maybe I'll speak about this more tomorrow because I don't have the time to ventilate it today. But apparently Rowley said, "Et tu, Brutus, thank you, Emery, for the accusation that I and those who followed my idea attempted to rig an election." Here's the problem. From the outside looking in, you know what I mean? And dare I say, it doesn't matter as much what the reality was, that there was depth in your authenticity, commitment, and caring, etc., etc. The political strategy should have been able to analyze the fact that the public would perceive it a certain way and respond based on that, not based on whatever it is supposed to be. And that's one of the things that I never fully understood. How is it that a government, 9 to 10 years in office, with so many political veterans, did not understand such a basic thing, that the public will view it badly and fail to account for that, seemingly fail to account for that in spectacular fashion, and hence the result. Dr. Brown has been cheeky over the last couple of days. Maybe a little too cheeky, maybe a little bit too much pekong, but it's been limited to pekong, and ironically, he's been more aggressive, potentially. He's saying, I think he's trying to say, well, let me leave Dr. Brown's side of the equation for another day. We're over time. We're over time. It'll be interesting to see. I'm telling you, I started off the show. I actually was sent this article because I didn't notice it this morning. When I said things about my concerns about the internal situation in the PNM, I didn't even see this yet. I didn't even see this yet. This is something to monitor. And dare I say, again, they are underestimating how they do themselves a disservice with their public perception. And I'm not talking about what Mr. Brown posted. Sean Michael Smallhead, this is Talking About on WSND Content Capital. I want to thank all of the callers and the social media comments. We appreciate the discussion. Hopefully, I have tried to constructively show where I disagreed. If anything, we could advance the discussion tomorrow and continue, pick up where we left off. But with that said, have a good day. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe, and never forget, it's nice to be nice, folks. Even if whoever voted for the other guy or girl, we're still one country, one people, multicultural, and we should be seeing each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities